Evening. I would like to call this meeting of the Caneo Recreation and Park District Board of Directors to order. And I feel like I should have, where's Sean disappear to? Oh, thank you. Could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Sean?
Oh, you're so kind. All right. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sean.
Hey, Chuck.
It's the last I want to hear from you tonight.
That's your neighbor?
Okay, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Director Huffer,
Yes.
Director Lang.
Here.
Director Cussworth. Here. Director Nichols.
Yes.
Director Buss. Here.
Thank you very much. It's like we have an exciting double header for our special presentations this evening. We're going to start out with pest control. Andrew, are you going to do introductions on this or?
Sure. He's our exterminator, so go for it.
So Tony is here as well as his supervisor, Matt Parker. And so they will be doing the pest control presentation for us tonight.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Rubalcaba. I am the pest control operator for CRPD. I've been with the district for 18 years. I started off as a contract worker in the grounds department, then got hired on in the grounds crew. I'm now the pest control operator. And I'll just explain a little bit of what I do. Some of what I do here at CRPD, I support the pest control needs for all departments with weed abatement, general pest control, ants, roaches, etc., rodent control, field refurbishments, site prep for special projects, bee removal and relocation, annual worker pesticide safety training for all field staff. Yeah, there we go. All right, we're back. All right, so you may ask yourself, what is a pest? Well, pests are organisms that damage or interfere with desirable plants in our sports fields, landscapes, open space, or even cause damage to facilities or other structures. Pests also include organisms that impact human or animal health that can potentially transmit disease or may just be a nuisance to us. Pests can be weeds in landscapes, a vertebrate such as a bird, rodent, or mammals, a snail, insect, mite, tick, nematode, or pathogen that causes disease to plants. How pest control is achieved and why. With integrated pest management, IPM. IPM is an approach that establishes a sustainable approach to managing pests by combining preventative, biological, cultural, physical, and chemical practices in a way that minimizes economic, health, and environmental risk. Process you can use to solve pest problems while minimizing risk to people and the environment. IPM control methods such as cultural, physical, biological, and chemical. With the guidance from the district, integrated pest management plan, the goal is to reduce pest issues to tolerable and or manageable thresholds. This is achieved by utilizing best management practices to meet the objectives to the district's IPM plan, which are prevention of loss or damage to structures or property by pests, elimination of significant threats caused by pests to the health and safety of patrons and staff, protection of environmental quality at parks and inside and outside of buildings. Special IPM efforts and strategies. Since 2005, the district ceased using anticoagulant rodenticides in effort to reduce the potential adverse effects on wildlife who prey on rodents. Since 2010, the district has made a concentrated effort to decrease the use of non-organic fertilizers by changing turf management practices. with programmed annual downtime for annual field refurbishments to allow for turf aeration and filling with sand and top dress with organic compost materials. This preventative cultural practice has led to strong roots and less weeds in our fields. In 2015, we've stopped using all rodenticides, poisons used to control rodents, relying on traps and CO carbon monoxide gas ground injections instead. The picture on the lower right-hand side is our CO machine used for ground boring rodent control. And there I am using a little gopher rodent control in some of our sites. In 2019, we've stopped using herbicides containing glyphosate or any Roundup product and developed urban parks and added the sustainability and resilience strategic objective elements to the district's IPM plan. The objective of the sustainability and resilience strategic element is to operate the district in an environmentally and economically sustainable manner. This strategy is used to evaluate new ideas, embrace change, and continuously move the district towards environmentally sustainable and cost-effective operations. Weed abatements activities are carried out to protect human health. An example is being the reduction of poison oak in developed parklands and open space interfaces, and for public safety by maintaining low vegetative roadside buffers for fire hazard reductions, traffic visibility, the mitigation and management of invasive plant species, and for the aesthetics of our parks and facilities. Our common pests found in facilities are ants, roaches, rats, and mice. And common pests found in our landscapes and other grounds are gophers, ground squirrels, moles, wasps, hornets, and yellow jackets. Also insects, disease, and pathogens associated with plants. For our field refurbishments, as previously mentioned, we program downtime for our fields. Refurbishments where I provide herbicide treatments as necessary in efforts to maintain the safety, playability, and aesthetics of our inventory of sports fields. We also have a program that's a bee removal and relocation, since bees are our protective species. We tend to remove the bees and relocate them, such as any building, storage rooms, irrigation valve boxes, underground voids, and we relocate the queen and the whole colony 5 miles outside. Otherwise, they'll return back to their hive. I also do an annually safety training. Annually, I provide California State Department of Pesticide Regulations mandatory worker pesticide safety training for all field and park ranger staff that spray pesticides or work on equipment that is issued for pesticide applications. Also provide any PPE safety gear to all of our staffs as needed. And this concludes my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you. Don't leave the podium yet, because I'm sure some of our board members have questions. Yes, Director Cusworth.
So I have a couple of questions. Are you just the main pesticide guy and just train our rangers and groundskeeper, or do you have a staff that works with you to just take care of this? Seems like quite a bit of work.
It is. I am the only pest control operator for the whole district. I am qualified. I have a QAC through the state. And I also do a lot of training with our staff. Anybody that comes in contact with any chemical equipment, repairs, and pretty much I handle everything. But like I said, besides all of our staff between grounds, rangers, everybody's fully trained and certified to operate within the district.
So if you needed to have help, you would just get some help just on a as needed basis.
Correct, yeah. There's normally about 2 to 3 guys within the district that work with me as needed, depending on, how big of a job or what we're doing, such as sports fields, weed abatement, and maintaining our open space for fire preventative. And as far as bees, also it's kind of a big deal. So I always have assistants just to relocate them, put them in a safe space and open space.
So I'm just curious, how long have you been with the district? And before you came, was this something that we had outside contractors taking care of this? Is this a new position or has this been a position for a long time?
This has been a position for a long time. I've been here for 18 years.
Oh,
And since I've started, I have always worked with the previous pest control operator. So ever since I've been trained, I got state certifications. I got my license through them. And as far as I know, there's some areas, some buildings that are maintained by contractors, such as a Stagecoach Museum. I know there's a contractor, but they do the basic insecticide maintenance of the buildings. But for the most part, I do most of it.
because I think this is, maybe I've forgotten, but I think this is the first time you've presented in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I don't.
So this seems like it's a new area. So I have another question, just a personal question. What do you use instead of Roundup? Do you have the name of the product and can it be purchased in like Home Depot?
What I use instead of Roundup, we no longer use Roundup or Monsanto products. What I use is a herbicide called Lifeline, and it's totally different than Roundup. It's a more friendly herbicide, and it works well. And that's mostly what we use to control weeds.
And where do you purchase that?
There's a company that we use, it's called Agarex, but really any company that's licensed will sell that, but it's not really open to the public. It's got to be state certified,
Okay.
but it is one of our safest and better options rather than Roundup or anything that has the glyphosate chemical on it.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was things that, could be recommended just for homeowners to use. So, but I guess this wouldn't be that easy to purchase.
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Director Nichols.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I really appreciated the presentation. I was wondering, as you were, out there in your suit and then spraying with a wand and with a truck, how much of what you do is regularly scheduled that, every January you do something, every June you do something, and then you kind of have a schedule, as opposed to things pop up where you get a phone call or a direction that says, hey, we need you to do this. I just was curious how much is, I don't know if you call that, on call or emergency basis versus scheduled, and how you juggle all that.
It's a little bit of both. We have a yearly schedule as far as weeds. It's normally like a quarter, every quarter of the year. It's every 2 to 3 months, depending on the site. But lately, due to all the rain we've been having, we've been getting massive weeds everywhere. And, also with the fire hazards around, we have to maintain everything, just keep it safe and, But yeah, everything's pretty much scheduled throughout the year. But, as needed, we just jump on it and take care of it. Safety issues.
Well, I think the parks reflect your hard work. So thank you for you and your crew.
Thank you.
Director Lang.
Yes, in your presentation, you showed beehives and so forth. You mentioned you relocate them in a certain distance.
Mhm.
How frequently does that happen? And how large is the average beehive by the time you get to it?
We actually have a lot of beehives in some of our parks. And since we're pretty much surrounded by a lot of open space around the area, there's thousands of beehives in open space. But once beehives kind of outgrow their massive area, they'll create a new queen, and a new hive will start, which means that that new hive will kind of swarm around, find a home. But normally what I deal with is beehives that go under our valve boxes and find a home. So most of the time they could range anywhere from a small beehive of 5,000 bees to an average of 30,000. I think the biggest one I pulled out must have been like a 60,000 beehive. Pretty massive. I had to actually get help. It was pretty big, so, but that happens all the time. And, since bees are a protective species, we got to do our best to relocate them. And since Park District has tons of open space, I do have to relocate them 5 miles outside of that radius. Otherwise, they'll fly back to their hive. And from experience, before I learned that, I relocate them maybe 2-3 miles, and within a few days, they were back in.
Yeah.
So, live and you learn.
You're a quick learner.
Yes.
Do we have any, I can't recall the name of the bee, raised bees for honey?
Mhm.
Anyway, do we have any that are associated with CRPD that you could say, hey, there's a big beehive here, a lot of honey and so forth. Can you come and harvest the honey?
That's, as far as harvesting honey, we don't really do that. But depending on the type of hive it is, mostly it's beehives. I've also dealt with Africanized bees, and they can get pretty crazy. But as far as beehives, I do have a few contacts throughout the county that they will come get the bees and relocate them. And they normally relocate them around the fields around growers. So there is some that will take them back to their groves so they can pollinate their crops.
Oh, thank you very much. Good presentation, very informative. And I don't know if CRPD should start a side business of honey. CRPD honeys, sweetest in the canal.
I like it.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Director Buss.
So I work in residential real estate as my day job, and we do termite inspections all the time. I was curious, do we do termite inspections on our facilities?
We do, yeah.
How often do we do them?
All the time. Part of my weekly schedule is also doing inspections. So I do go around, inspect buildings, structures, open space. But as far as buildings, we do have some older building sheds. And I do run through a few termites around mostly the facial structures of the buildings. So there is, stuff that I do deal with termites as well.
Okay, but we haven't had to fumigate any of our facilities, the
No,
older ones.
since I've been here, we have not.
Okay.
And I think part of it is also because I try to maintain most of it, or if I see any termite rot in some of our structures, I do work with maintenance and we deal with it before it gets out of control or creates a safety issue for any structure or building.
That's great. Thank you so much. I loved your presentation.
Thank you.
Tony, thank you very much for your presentation. Best I can recall, Director Cussworth said she hadn't heard a presentation from you, and I've been on the board for 12 years. I don't recall a presentation in the past 12 years, so I think we're overdue. So I appreciate all the information. You did answer the question about what we use currently for vegetation control. Had a couple of questions about bees, and I'm just wondering if we happen to find a swarm of bees on the weekend, who do we call?
That would be me.
Darn, I wish I'd known that last Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, we have swarms that come into our parks all the time, but normally the swarms will come in. because they're normally looking for a new home, so they'll tend to rest in a tree or a structure. And the best thing we do to protect them is just barricade, caution the area, let them be. That way they can kind of move on within a few days after they rest and find a new home. But that happens all the time.
Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind next time. We had a swarm of bees that decided to take over one of the easy up tents
Oh,
at our soccer tournament. So
yeah, and
now,
yeah, the tricky thing about that, since it's a protective species, you just gotta let them be.
oh, well, I'm glad we didn't try to kill them then or something like that. So anyway, Tony, thank you very much for the information. We do appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
And next on the special presentations agenda would be Dos Vientos Community Center. Mr. Tanaka, how are you going to follow this act?
A tough act to follow. Mine's not quite as exciting, but it is a lot of fun, as you can see from the opening pictures that we have here. So just want to say good evening. Thank you, Chair Huffer and esteemed board, for taking this moment to hear from Dos Vientos Community Center. I'm Rick Tanaka. I'm the site supervisor. Also, a big part of the team is site coordinator Tamara Spatz-Tornero, and we're running a great many programs and services out of the Dos Vientos Center and numerous offsite locations. But tonight we want to focus on just one of many of our areas of programming. One of our bigger categories of popular programming is school break enrichment clubs. They're fulfilling a wide variety of public interests at the Dos Vientos Community Center and beyond. I know that when seasonal breaks from school take place, many families are looking for something fun or educational or athletic or creative to engage in. And this is where we step in. Yes, a great many families are looking for the all-day camps, and Conejo Recreation Park District does an amazing job for providing these. But a great many are also looking for special half-day camps, often referred to as clubs. And we have taken note of this choice and stepped up to fulfill this request. When people think about school break programming, we of course think about summer camps, but the winter break and spring break programs are also in high demand. Just this past week, we provided for over 60 different families by successfully providing 7 different clubs. Some of the big hits included Wrangler Camp over at Rancho Potrero Community Equestrian Center, and Spring Break Ninja Training, and Pins and Needle Sewing Camp. These are just a few of the examples of the many clubs offered. This past year, these clubs have provided meaningful recreational activities to nearly 1,000 different participants. The majority of these clubs can be placed in categories of STEM, general interest, home economics, or sports and outdoors. Community interest in these clubs has continued to grow over the years, as evidenced by the 25% increase in registration from the last year. I do want to point out that we at the Dos Vientos Center are not the only ones providing seasonal clubs. Other units are also offering this type of programming, sometimes even the same thing at a different center, in order to provide opportunities to the public that is closer to their own home. But call me biased, I especially like the programs that we provide at Dos Vientos. A key component to our ability to provide such a diverse range of programming opportunities is partnerships. One of these major partnerships is with the city of Westlake Village. Throughout the year, we provide recreational programming for Westlake Village for residents of all ages, but during the summer, the city also arranges use of the White Oak Elementary School campus through Las Virgenes Unified School District to provide summer day clubs in the Westlake area. Last year, we had 166 participants across 13 different clubs at the White Oak campus. This arrangement provided quality recreational opportunities to the community of Westlake Village while also generating registration revenue for CRPD. Last year, we brought in $35,000 in registration revenue at this site. This year, we plan to serve even more with 32 different clubs scheduled at White Oak. It's going to be a busy summer. Another partnership that earns a great deal of fanfare is with Rancho Potrero Community Equestrian Center. With them, we provide classes throughout the year, but also equestrian clubs known as Wrangler camps during school breaks. These clubs have a reputation for high quality programming, and eager families register first thing in the morning on priority registration day, and camps fill up fast. This past Monday, their summer programs filled up within 20 minutes of registration opening. 20 minutes. Oops. Sarah, Brian, and their team at Ride On lease the CRPD property and exude great care and safe, adventurous programming, emphasizing equestrian care and appreciation. Partnerships are not just with other agencies. They're also with local individuals and businesses as well. Through them, we're able to bring an abundance of specialized skills and experience to the programming table to further widen the quality programming offerings available to the public. Our contract instructors are trained specialists, business owners, or retired professionals. When participants are taking Spring Sewing Club from Pins and Needles or Cupcake Creations Club from the owner of Siblings Bakery, they are receiving an experience that they will carry with them for years to follow. The value and opportunity that is created through all of our partnerships is tremendous, but they cannot overshadow the passionate programming brought by our frontline team of recreation aides, leaders, and specialists. Our staff team up to bring in-house resources, decades of collective experience, and excited collaboration to program development. And this builds trust, devotion with the families that we serve, leading to years, even lifetimes of program participation. Some of the constantly popular staff-run programs are Adventure Club or Archery Club, pictured here. And with every new team member that we bring on board, exciting new ideas follow suit. So what's next? Well, even as we're providing all of this, we're always asking the public what they want to see next, whether it's by monitoring registration trends, hosting advisory committee meetings, or just through our day-to-day interactions with the public. We're keeping our fingers on the pulse of community interest, then making it happen. Just the other day, I spoke with a mom that says her 8-year-old daughter and her friends want to take a slime making program. Doesn't that sound like fun? Another parent told me about their junior high school child's interest in crochet. These are just a couple of the new things that our staff or partners will be bringing to the future table. And of course, we will continue to develop and expand the programs that continue their track record of success. So in conclusion, seasonal clubs, they're a hit. Partnerships are invaluable and staff are essential. Progress is active listening followed by action. That's what we're doing at the Dos Ventas Community Center. I want to thank you, members of the board, for all of your hard work in providing the resources that we need to continue to provide these quality programs and services that our community counts on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And I'm guessing we probably have some comments or questions from the board. I'll start on this side with Director Buss.
Look at that. We're taking turns. So thank you for your presentation. It was amazing. I will say that the slime camp idea as a mother of an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old is an amazing idea. In fact, many of my friends will not allow their children to make slime in their home. I personally don't mind, but I think that would really be a huge hit. I do have a question on when the camps fill up so quickly, like the Wranglers Club within 20 minutes, which many of my girlfriends also complain about the fact that everything fills up in 20 minutes. Do we have opportunity to put more out there, or is that we've already looked at and it's like, that's all we have for Wranglers Club? We can't actually add more.
So it's a very good question. Specifically with Wrangler Camp, this is a limited resource because, again, with the care that Ride On puts into their facility and specifically their horses, they are limited to how much programming they can provide because they can't overwork the horses, essentially, is what it is. So they're very strategic in how they schedule their programs and how many programs they space out throughout any session calendar.
Okay. So that makes sense. My kids ride horses, so I'm familiar. I am a barn mom. Never rode myself, so I understand that. And so, but the other programs there, is that just primarily the one that fills up very quickly? The other ones
do as well. I mentioned, and there seems to be a pattern with limited resource camps tend to be quite popular. Another one I pointed out was Pins and Needles Sewing Camp. Again, a very popular program, but it's a limited resource. We can only fit so many sewing machines in there, and we just have the one specialized instructor. And she is also offering programs at multiple locations.
Oh,
So
okay.
again, you
Yeah.
know, strategic allocation of resources is a day-to-day experience in our units.
Well, great job. And I love the fact that you're using Las Virgenes School District site to create money for CRPD.
Thank you.
It's been going on for years.
Director Lang.
Yes, good presentation, Rick. Always
Thank you.
give us things to think about as board members and so forth. Keep moving forward with programs supporting you and our staff. You showed the archery club.
Yes.
Now, is that something that an individual who really has an enthusiastic bent on archery, that they can keep moving up in skills? Because, you know, that is something that even the Olympics, you know, have as archery competition and so forth. So I was just curious, do we offer within the park district other classes or programs beyond these little archery clubs?
Very good question, Director Lang. Thank you. No, we don't. The thing is that with expanded levels of archery, we need to expand the range. And with that, we need a very basically a facility that is specifically designed for higher levels of archery. So our programs are for beginners to intermediate. You know, they may take our programs a few times, but once they start getting into the use of the compound bows and greater distances, they need to go out to another facility that is designed for that type of programming, such as the archery range out in the east end of Simi Valley or something along those lines.
Okay. Thank you. And again, appreciate your presentation and keep up the good work. We love you.
Thank you very much.
Director Cusworth.
So with regard to slime, I think it's so popular, it's sometimes hard to buy liquid Tide in the supermarket. I've
And
noticed
glue.
that. Yeah, and the glue, being that I've worked with youth and grandkids and everything else. I don't know how you could continue that for more than a couple of sessions, but yeah, that's a pretty big deal. Also, I think you answered my question with the Wrangler camp. You provide the horses. If you bring your own horse, can you get in easier? Or is it, no,
Well, with the location of the Rancho Petrera Community Equestrian Center, it's also a board and care location. So some people do have their horses there, but they tend to not be the ones that are going to be signing up for the camp
I
the
see.
classes. It's not a centralized location where someone could easily transport their horse to that to participate. I also believe that people that have their own horses tend to already have their own rides in mind per se.
okay, they know what they're doing. So, all righty. So I was also thinking with partnership, crocheting. Have you ever thought of partnering with the Goebel Center? They have a lot of knitters and crocheters over there that would probably love to give a lot of hands-on instruction to these girls. Just a thought, or boys, I shouldn't. Yes, or boys.
Thank you for that suggestion. I am actually quite familiar with the Goebel Center and I worked closely with that group, and I was planning on reaching out to them to find out if any of their senior volunteers might be interested in assisting with that type of program.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I remember I learned how to crochet when I was very young. I'm really horrible at it, but so you wouldn't want to ask me to help anyone else, but
I'm not sure. I think you should bring in some of your work and show us and let us be the
yeah,
judge.
let's do that. You probably talked about this, but so you do the summer camps for Westlake kids over at White Oaks Elementary. Did you say that during the year you do programs for kids in Westlake? And if you do, where is that located at?
During the year, during the non-summer seasons, we do programming at the Westlake Community Room. It's right next to the Westlake Library, Westlake City Hall. There's a smaller community room right there where we do both senior and youth programming. There's some very popular senior yoga and Tai Chi that's continuing. And then we're also offering dance and Lego engineering and even karate programming over there throughout the year.
Well, I think that that's really great. You're really spread out between Westlake, the Newberry Park, and then clear out to Rancho Potrero. So you're covering a lot of ground in this community. Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a follow-up to that, I was wondering why it is that the furthest community center away from Westlake Village is providing services to the city of Westlake Village. And not only that, but all the way over to Las Virgenes. How did that happen?
I may want to defer this question.
Rochelle probably
It
would
was
like to
before
jump in
our
on this
time.
one.
It's just always been that way, right?
No, we try to kind of spread things out amongst the different units. So they have specialized different things, outdoor, Urban Cray Ranch or different things. So when Westlake came up, that was offered to Dos Vientos to take it on. So they had a specialist that did it, but I actually don't know when Karen was here, why specifically Dos Vientos did it, but we've just left it there.
Okay,
They don't complain.
Yeah, and yeah, from history, it's partly workload balance among different centers with the stuff they do outside their centers.
Like
And
Orchard has a skate park.
and yeah, so there's that, and it's surprisingly a quick shot if you go through Hidden Valley. It's a little faster.
And a
believe it or
beautiful
not.
drive.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think it'd be worth it to also point out that we also take care of other programming over in Westlake with the after-school programming at the Westlake Elementary campus. We also do programming over at Bernie's Bennett Park and other locations out there. So we're strategic in our disbursement of resources over to that side of town.
No, thanks.
A little FYI, CRPD has been providing services to the city of Westlake Village for 25 years or thereabouts. So this isn't the program of working with the city of Westlake Village is not new, but the different programming that we're hearing about is very much new and expanded. So the city of Westlake Village is a real believer in CRPD.
Rick, when you're referring to the distinction between camps and clubs and summer versus your spring breaks or whatever that is, I was thinking about this last catalog that I just saw for the summer, and there was like pages upon pages upon pages of camps and things offered. I'm wondering with what you seem to express a continued interest in camps and these clubs, with what you offer, how many of those actually go as planned? What percentage generally go as planned as opposed to, you don't quite get enough? Is it continuing to increase? Because I know there's quite a significant diversity there. I was wondering how that has worked out in reality for actually making that happen.
There has absolutely been a steady increase in registration over the years. It can be difficult to gauge just because of the situation that we were coming out of and the increase in registration at that point. But another great point with these clubs is the diversity of interest in that they are highly specialized, and there can be somewhat of a factor of unknown in offering something if we're not sure if it's really going to take. For example, the slime. Let's say we offer the slime club. It's a 1-week camp, and we've heard it unanimously that this sounds like it's going to be a hit, but we won't really know until registration actually takes place. So there are some programs that we try, they don't succeed, and we take that into consideration as we're doing our future planning, and we'll pull those from the next season and go with something new, and then continue with what has been successful.
I'm sure, because I just looking at that, I don't think anyone would complain about a lack of variety of options. It may not be in their preferred location, but they can certainly find a place. So thank you for the explanation. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to have you here and update us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Rick, I just want to add my thanks to a great presentation you put on this evening. It's always good to hear what's going on at each of the individual centers, at least every couple, 3 years to see what's old and what's new. the partnerships that you talk about, both with agencies like the Westlake Village and the Las Virgenes School District and the various contractors. You know, without those kind of partnerships, we couldn't offer a third or less of what we see in our catalog 5 times a year. And that Director Lang did answer my question about why took the furthest center from Westlake Village to run those programs, but been done for a long time. My only comment would be sometimes in the past, some of our presenters have brought along items that are representative of their center or their programs, and I just, you know, next time you come here, if you're still doing cupcake creations, you know, maybe that would be appreciated.
I didn't see honey presented to the board from the previous presentation.
Very good, Rick.
True, very true. We should have brought that up as well. So anyway, Rick, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, item 4 on the agenda is items from the public. I do have several speaker cards, but I would like to point out to those of you in the audience who maybe are not regular attendees to our CRPD board meetings that items from the public is an opportunity to briefly speak, but there can be no feedback or questions or comments or anything from staff or from the board. However, I suspect that some or many of you are here dealing with pickleball and the possibility of pickleball being included as part of our annual budgeting process. We do happen to have item 7 on our agenda is the first public hearing preliminary budget fiscal year 23-24. So unless one of you who presented me with a card really wants to get up and speak now, in about 5 minutes we'll be on item 7, and that'll be an opportunity not only to speak, but to exchange information with staff or with the board. So any of you that presented a card, do you want to go now or you wait for about 5 minutes? Thank you. Okay, item 6 on the agenda, consent calendar, A, approval of minutes, and B, approval of warrants. I will entertain a motion. Director Nichols.
To the agenda.
Oh, God, I've so number 5, approval of the agenda. Thank you, Director.
That's only the first time this year, so.
I know. Item 5, approval of agenda. Director Lang, since you mentioned it.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Can I get a second? Director Cusworth. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Now, item 6, consent calendar, approval of minutes and approval of warrants.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Lang, any questions or comments? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Move along to item 7, deferred matters. And I have to officially open the public hearing for the preliminary budget fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25.
If I may, I have a little preamble before I turn it over to Melissa. Is that okay?
Certainly.
Sure. Thank you. Chair Huffer's member of the board, and don't want to avoid the obvious. There's a ton of people in the room interested in what I suspect is pickleball courts. So I wanted to kind of give a little more of an overview of the process that we're in. For those of you that aren't familiar, like the board is, we do this year after year, but we have multiple public hearings leading to the final adoption of the budget, usually in June. And this is the first, and we don't actually have any paper in front of anyone. So this is the great time to present ideas, because Andrew, the parks administrator, is busily trying to figure out what resources he has and what needs there are in the district and what the wants are. And we actually pay attention to needs versus wants, because we do have a lot of facilities out there that have, are old and need repairs and that kind of thing. So it's a balancing act for sure. One of the things I do want to set the stage about, though, is also what we've gone through in the last few years and where we're at today. And one of the really odd things that ended up being a good thing for the park district was between the Woolsey fire and the COVID relief money that we got through the state, we got about $7.5 million that we did not expect to have in about 2020, around there. And with that money, we were able to build Page Lane Park, which had been on our to-do list since the 70s. So it took us 40 years to get to Page Lane Park, but we got there. We did those teen and senior center upgrades. And then, as you know, this year we're going through the 8 playgrounds in the shade structure at TO Park. So that money, that one-time money, we recognized it was what it was, one-time money. It wasn't going to recur year after year. So we've largely spent that, and that represents, you know, the $7.5 million a year over 3 years is pretty much more than doubles what our normal CIP spending is. So to give you a sense of, the last 3 years have been really good for capital, but we're kind of returning to more of a era of normalcy. So we're more likely to have like $1.5 million of new money to $2 million maybe for allocating among all the needs and wants in the district. So going into our capital budget, that's where we're at. And I just wanted to share that with the public because that's the reality of the financial situation. But of course, we've always figured out how to do the next cool thing here at the Park District. And it's one of the reasons we have a really great system. So kind of with that, I want to turn it over to maybe Melissa to go through a little bit more, maybe the calendar on specifically what hearing dates we're going to have capital and operating, and then capital and operating, that kind of thing.
Sure. So we have the public hearing at every single board meeting from now through the end of June. The first kind of run through of both the proposed final operating and capital is going to be the first meeting of June, and then with the hopeful final adoption in the last meeting in June. So June is our goal for the final completion, and through all the meetings between now and then, we're going to be here to listen to comments from the public like you about what we want to see in it. That's the process.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have 3 speaker cards, all related to the budgeting process. I'd like to first hear from Catherine Nolan, and we're asking each of the speakers if you just go up to the podium and let us know your name, and if you wish, where you live.
Hi, my name is Catherine Nolan. I live in Thousand Oaks, and I brought my pickleball paddle with me so I could show you in case any of you haven't seen it. And this is actually a pickleball. So the great thing about pickleball is that there are different paddles for different levels of ability. I've been playing for about 5 years. So this is a pretty good paddle. It costs about $140, but there are also paddles that they sell at Big Five and Dick's Sporting Goods that cost, $20 for a 2-pack. This is the ball that we use at the Rancho Caneo courts. Mostly it's called a Franklin X40. And there's a different ball that they use indoor. Different parts of the country have different preferences as far as what ball they like to use. The great thing about pickleball is it's for all ages and all levels of ability. So I'm a little bit further up the ladder because I've been playing for a while. We have other pickleball players here today who are not speaking today. So I'd like to invite them to stand up, and whoever has a paddle with them can show you what they have. And I'd love to know which of you has been playing for less than a year. Anybody been playing for less than a year? All right. How about more than 2 years? Cool. So we love CRPD, and we love the programming that you offer to people for new players with the classes. We also have a tournament coming up this weekend. I'm the president of Ventura County Pickleball Club, and we have entered into an agreement with CRPD for this year to we've always assisted with tournaments, but this year we're co-working on tournaments together as kind of a trial. So Carol, our treasurer, Ventura County Pickleball Club treasurer, printed us these cool tags for our events this weekend. Dana Miller is the CRPD staff member who is there to assist us. She's awesome. She's there at every tournament, and we really appreciate her. We have an email list of 600 and something people. We have almost 300 members of our club that people pay $35 a year to belong to. We have funds in our budget. We would like to help with the building of new courts, but we're a small club. We don't have lots of money. So first of all, thank you. Tournament this weekend is great. I was in front of this board for the first time in late 2019. And at that time, I requested more pickleball courts. We've come a lot further now than where we were then, but we still don't have more pickleball courts, and the need is growing. We have a lot more players coming all the time. We really could use more pickleball courts. I came in here that first day with a petition that was signed by more than 200 players requesting more courts. And I wonder whether we could have pickleball on a specific budget day or talk about how we can get it in the budget for this year. Is my time up?
You have 3 more seconds or so I mean, we only
Sure.
have 3 speaker cards, so
Oh.
I'm gonna be really strict on the timing, so.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that there are 6 courts at Rancho Caneo and 2 courts at Del Prado. They're busy all the time, and it used to be that they were busy just in the mornings and the evenings. Now there are so many people who are playing that it's later into the day and earlier in the evening. So there's definitely a growing need for more courts. We'd love pickleball. All the pickleball players would love to find a way to get pickleball as a priority. I personally don't feel it's been a priority until now. It's been discussed, but nothing has actually been done. There are no more new pickleball courts. So could we get that as an agenda item? And lastly, I'd like to invite all of you. There's a great tournament going on right now. It's called the US Open Minto tournament. It's going on in, does anyone know where it is? I've been watching it live in Florida. I've been watching it live on YouTube on some of the days, but it's for a whole week long. And it's a great way to see how, when I play pickleball, what it should look like. It's not what it does look like, but then you can see what it looks like, the ball, the paddle, and you can check it out. And if anybody wants to come out and play, I always have an extra paddle. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next to have Alan Linderman.
So I am the Alan Linderman, and I live in Newbury. There's only one that I know of anyway. I live in Newbury Park, and we've been residents of this area for about 16 years now. We lived in Rancho Conejo when those pickleball courts were being built, and watched them being built, and also watched them begin to be used. And as Catherine said earlier, that usage went from, gee, this is really cool, how nice to have courts here, to it's hard to get on the courts, and sometimes you have to wait a long time between games. So is that the worst thing in the world? Of course not. One of the things that's wonderful about this game is the social aspects of it. I think we're all pretty much familiar with the fact that nowadays, one of the issues, especially among adults, is some mental health issues, and the social aspects of pickleball address that in many different ways. I can tell you that because of CRPD and the good job that you've done, there are so many more pickleball players today. When somebody talked about being unable to get into a game or a court or something that took 20 minutes before they could do it, and then it was sold out. It takes 20 seconds to be sold out of any of the classes that CRPD holds that teach pickleball. And so that's just an indication of how challenging it is and how important it is to some of the adults in this community. I will tell you that many people here who've been clamoring to learn have settled on learning implications from anybody who would teach them. Help me here, help me here. Can you show me how to hit the ball? Catherine's great at that. We all want to play the way Catherine plays. But the point is that, a few months ago, I decided to go into a process to learn how to teach pickleball. I just felt that in our community, there were too many people who were telling people the wrong things about how to get into the game. So the National Pickleball Registry and USA Pickleball has a whole program that they put in place to teach people how to teach. And I joined that program. And after several months and a lot of testing, I passed that program. And so now I'm a certified coach. And what that's done for me is it allowed me to meet so many more new people. The social aspect has expanded. And I now have been helping people that I never knew before. And these are good people, great people who enjoy the game. And as they get better, they're going to be on those same 10 courts that we have, trying to get a time on the courts. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please do.
Yes, thank you for that. You touched on something about the social element of the sport. And I just had a question because I remember when I was visiting Del Prado, when we were talking about, potential pickleball locations, one of the individuals says, yes, we came to Del Prado, but only because Rancho Conejo was full. I said, well, and there was nobody there at the time. I says, why don't you just come here directly? He says, because there's no coffee shop nearby. I said, but you're playing pickleball. But he mentioned to the fact is, well, yes, but then there's the after the game part of it,
Right.
Talking about the social. So is that what you're referring to, that it's more than just a game? Or are you talking about the social element of the game or the camaraderie that I see here amongst the people?
Yes, I can tell you that most of the people here who have shirts like mine and have paddles, I didn't know a year ago. And many of them are my best friends. And it didn't happen at Starbucks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And then the third card, I'm not quite sure the middle is, it's LS or LJ Scamhorn.
My wife and I would like to vouch for everything that Alan said. I'm going to look around and make 100% sure. But clearly, before COVID, before we were introduced to pickleball, I didn't know a single person here. I've said this multiple times to Director Huffer that many of us, I don't know where we would have been during COVID had it not been for the CRPD keeping the pickleball courts open, when I'm sure many people were on you to not do that. And we will be forever grateful for that. There's many of us here that you can see by our age that have raised families here and worked here, paid our property taxes here, that have finally had a chance to not be forced to work and now have a little bit of free time, but we have limited time left, just as you all do. I can't thank the board enough for finally putting us into the 10-year resolution. We're extremely grateful to Directors Huffer and Directors Lang for taking the 18 months with the staff to do the research to get us to the point where, with a little money and just a little bit of time, we could have a new court that, frankly, there hasn't been a new one built for, I believe, 5 years. Am I correct on that? The CRPD has done, I don't know, it was interesting hearing some of your other program directors here tonight. The rate at which the demand is growing, and I suspect that you all have some awareness of it. If not, we'd be happy to send you some pictures or come by Saturday or Sunday at RC, what we call Rancho Conejo. There are literally over 2,000 people on the mailing list of a club that's only existed for a couple of years, not like AYSO that's been here since most everyone here was a child, or Little League, like most everyone here was a child, but it's only existed for 2 years. And now, through the efforts of CRPD with the volunteer staff, including several of the people here, Mary and Alan and a couple other people, you're literally creating a funnel every 8 weeks of 70 new players, that many of whom are frankly are women that when they were young, Title IX didn't exist. They didn't even have a chance to play a sport. And now if you come out there and you observe, what you will see is that you'll see a tremendous amount of ladies who are having the time of their life. And they will humble a lot of us men who grew up playing athletics. Because it's not like tennis where the man outpowers the woman. It's not that way at all. It's about as equality as you can get. And it's a wonderful thing to see. So this funnel that you have created by maybe master design, but it was brilliant. And having the court that Tom Hare and that you originally designed to have enough courts at one place when you put in those 6. And Mary, you don't want anybody to know this, but damn it, they should. Mary put in the breezeway and paid for the tarp to put over the top to create the shade. So when it's 90 degrees out there, you can sit between games and wait for your next game and socialize with your friends. The same thing's happening up at Rancho where there's 2 courts. Del Prado, excuse me. So collectively, you're having each year now, you're building this base on top of what was, but think about this now, 700 new players. Now there's a few of us dying, but most aren't. Probably net out at least 670. Now, please explain to me, because the one thing that you've been very, very consistent about is that if we said yes, if you all said yes tomorrow, if everybody was go, we're a couple years, maybe 3 away from the next new set of courts. Now think about that when you do your projections. You got 700 new players coming on in 2023. You're going to double that in 2024, and you're going to have another 700 in 2025. Now, where the hell are all those people going to play? There's 2 courts for us. You know, there's what? Marissa, when you and I talk, you know, there's 41 parks for little children, but we're becoming, where's the demographic? What's everybody know about the demographic of Thousand Oaks? It's no longer a city for young people. It's a city for all of us in this room. We've aged here. We've had a wonderful time living here. And all we're asking to do is, now that we're at this point in our life, for thousands of us, is to have a chance to have a place to play while we're active. We'll eventually have to go to the Global Center, you know, but right now.
Come on, there's some active people at the Global Center too. So
Okay, thank you, Chuck. So that's all I want to say. Please, thank you again, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
good. and this is the kind of feedback that we need from the community. I mean, we get individual emails, or we run across people at meetings or in the grocery store, or occasionally on the soccer fields, one or two, and say, you know, we really need more pickleball courts. Well, some of you are very familiar with what the district has done in the last couple of years. Some of you maybe are not as familiar. Some of you maybe aren't familiar with it at all. Just very briefly, we did form 2 or 3 years ago a pickleball subcommittee of our board, and spent a lot of time working with staff, both on the park side and on the recreation side, in looking at potential sites for additional pickleball courts. Several people talked about the socialization aspect of pickleball. One of the thoughts that was thrown out, well, you know, you can put a single pickleball court here and put a single in there, and, you know, it doesn't take up all that much space, but you're not going to have the socialization. You just have 1 or 2 courts in a lot of different places. So part of the process that we went through with staff and the subcommittee was looking at the park sites that the district already has, park sites that would lend themselves to adding ideally at least 6 more pickleball courts, possibly 4 or 5, but ideally 6 pickleball courts. A facility that would have space. If it doesn't already have parking, there'd be space for parking. Because those of you who use Rancho Canero, you know, at many times of the day, particularly if there's anything else going on over there, that parking is at a real premium. So parking is important. One of the other factors that's important is being able to have lighted courts. You know, the feedback we've gotten pretty much from the very beginning from the pickleball community is that we'd like to have courts that are available all day and at least into the evening. Because, yeah, many of you or most of you are retired. Some of you aren't yet, but be nice to be able to play in the evening, particularly in the summertime when it's a little bit cooler once the sun goes down. So those were the factors that we were looking at. Originally started with, well, our entire portfolio of parks, but narrowed it down to about 20 parks that might lend themselves to that kind of facility. Went through some looking at various parks as to what's already going on over there, where additional pickleball courts might fit in with what's going on over there, and wouldn't greatly impact existing programming, existing facilities at these parks. Went through the process, narrowed it down to, I believe, 5 different possible sites, and the recommendation that the subcommittee brought to the full board and that the full board passed on 3 or 4 months ago.
November 2017 or something. Yeah, November.
Okay, in mid-November, decided that the preferred location for additional pickleball courts would be over at, and now I'm going to draw a complete blank on the park. Trianfo.
Basically tied.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, there are still 1 or 2 other possible locations, but for parking, lighting, the availability of space for ideally 5 or 6 more courts, and the fact that there are already existing hard courts over there, it's felt that Triunfo probably would be the best location. The other factor, one of the other factors that came into the play is that it's in a portion of the park district that doesn't really have any pickleball courts at all. So spread things out a little bit so that it's easier for someone who lives in Westlake Village or the eastern part of Thousand Oaks to get to pickleball courts rather than having to drive cross town either to Rancho Caneo or to Rancho
Del Prado.
Oh, Del Prado.
Del Prado. So there has been a site that's been selected by the full board. The biggest problem that we have right now, and one of the reasons for the public hearings for our budgeting, is that, as Mr. Friedel said, the Park District has limited resources. In order to put together a pickleball facility with, as we talked about, parking, lighting, 6 courts. I don't recall the exact numbers, but we're talking between $1 million, $1.5 million to put together a facility like that. One of the purposes, as I said, for these public hearings is to find out what's important in our community. You know, we do have a 2-year budget with fairly specific capital projects, but we also have a 10-year capital improvement budget, which is flexible in terms of, you know, we can move one project out further, move another project closer in time. So one of the things that one of the important factors that we take into account is what is our community, what are the people in the Park District really, what do they find important? And at least based on the turnout here this evening, seems like pickleball is fairly important. It's if someone came along and, you know, handed us $1 million, $1.5 million, you know, we could do it really quickly. But there are a lot of other priorities that the district has to deal with as well. So no, we're not ignoring pickleball. Yes, we know that it's increasing in popularity. It's not just an old folks sport. You know, see these tournaments that you see, and those aren't all old folks running around the professional pickleball circuit. I know one of our meetings a year or two ago, we had some high schoolers came in and said how much they enjoy pickleball. So we're very aware that pickleball is for the elderly, for the not so elderly, for the young, for the fit, for the not so fit, and working with individuals, working with groups like yours. I understand you're a small organization, so it's not like some large youth sports or adult sports organizations that can say, okay, here's $1 million, go ahead and build some courts for us. But the contacts that you all have locally and throughout the area, whether it's corporations or groups that do have deeper pockets than what we have, you know, if there's some way of working with you folks and you folks helping us work with other organizations that might have the funding, we're certainly open to any and all ideas. We're not putting off pickleball for 5 or 10 years or something like that, but short of the funding that comes along, it's also not going to happen next year. I can pretty much guarantee you that. So understand the process, as Mr. Friedel said. We understand the interest and popularity of pickleball. We're going to do everything we can to help you folks out sooner rather than later, but we need a little patience as well. So I'm going to get off my soapbox in case any of the other board members have anything that they wanted to add. Director Nichols?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just as a quick follow-up, we have many partnerships with organizations, and it could be museums, it could be Rancho Potrero with Ride On, but also with youth organizations for sports, and we partner with them and together do many things. Recently, we got another group, the Cricketers. We call them Cricketers. It's the cricket group. You know, they were clamoring for a spot. They put in some work to find a spot. It was between some soccer fields, so they worked out to make sure that it wasn't going to impact the soccer fields. And lo and behold, we were able to work something out. But they pretty much did all the footwork and did that, and then kind of presented a package to us. And they I think funded everything themselves, didn't they? They provided, which, was I say minimal. It certainly wasn't like building a pickleball court. But, those are the types of things which, once that flywheel gets started, things start happening. So we're always interested in that. And especially if there's a group that's, willing to, put in some sweat equity to make things happen. But again, we have, as we said, we heard from our recreation folks just as well as us, we have limited resources, can only spread those out so far. And it's a matter of collecting up enough to make it happen. And then where does that fit in the priorities of buildings that need to be replaced that are 60 years old versus, new pickleball courts. But when we have a group that's interested, active, providing some sweat equity, providing a plan, assisting with some finances and being creative and making things happen, that makes it a lot easier for us. And so I know you folks have the desire and have kind of put some of that together. So yeah, we've been looking forward to work with, any community group that's wanting to participate that we can partner with to make something happen. Obviously, if we never hear about it, we can't do something about it. But when we do hear about it, it's like, okay, how can we work together? So yeah, thanks for showing up tonight. And I learned a little bit more about pickleball. Appreciate the effort and the social element. Sounds like it's just a lot of fun, whether you play real well or not, just having fun together. So thanks for sharing that tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Cuthworth.
I have 4 pickleball paddles from Big 5. My husband and I would love to play pickleball, but the courts are always too full. So I can understand that. And I think it's an important thing. I'd like to see us being able to work with your group, and I would like to see more pickleball courts come in before we're all dead. And I agree with you that we do have an aging population and that it would be nice to see something. They've mentioned finances a lot. That is an issue. But I'm glad that you've all come. I'm glad that you're bringing this to our attention. And nothing is set in stone yet as far as where the pickleball courts would be or how everything would go. So we're very open to suggestions. We're very open to working with the community, as Director Nichols has said. And we're very grateful that you're here. So yes, I think it's a good and important thing. And I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad that you've given your opinions. Thank you.
Yes, Director Buss.
Yeah, so I appreciate you reaching out and the conversation that I had with Mary and LJ. And so I did do some research since I am the new kid on the block here and wanted to figure out what was going on with pickleball since I really hadn't heard about it since the meetings I was watching. So I have a couple questions I think maybe perhaps you guys could ponder on and come back to us with. It was stated that it would be better if the 6 new courts could be closer to the other 6 courts so that you could have a tournament. So from my understanding, that's one of the more expensive places to put it in. It's about 1.5 million. So if there was a less expensive place to put in 6 courts, would you rather have 6 courts sooner or would you rather have them at that place? So that's something to ponder. My understanding too, that the income provided that comes in from these courts is about $5,700 a year from classes per court. So I would wonder if there's a way to make this a more lucrative venture for us on our end, because we will be putting up the initial investment. So that's something else that I thought maybe on your side, you could come back and tell us, well, maybe we can figure something out to give us more money from it. But yeah, so those were the 2 things that from my meeting and then from my conversations with CRPD with us, I said us, that I just was wondering on your side, if you could come back and maybe we could work on this a little more to make it a more lucrative annual income coming in that would offset the expense, and then people might feel more open to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lang.
Yes, I have a question and some comments. I recall a figure of 2,000 people on the mailing list. Is that correct? Is that just here in the Conejo Valley? Okay. And I've heard that the youth are starting to get involved and so there's going to be a need added with that particular element.
Changed and a few years back, the average age of pickleball player was 57 years old. And now it's down to 35.
Okay, as talking about demographics and interests and so forth, and cricket was mentioned. That's something that I've been on the board a number of years, and that was something that cricket and one other sport was brought to us many years ago, and it just wasn't the interest. And pickleball is a more recent, phenomenon. In fact, in all honesty, and Mr. Friedel may know this, and I don't think anybody else on the board or staff, but I'm the one who brought pickleball to the Canal Valley. I attended a national conference in Salt Lake City, and as an athlete, as used to be, I was interested in sports and so forth. And at this conference in Salt Lake City, they had a class about upcoming popular sports, and pickleball was featured. And then downstairs in the conference center, they actually had pickleball courts set up and invited us to play. And it was as a tennis, longtime tennis player and tournaments and racquetball and so forth, this was of interest. And the more I heard about it, from the people at the conference and knowing CRPD and what we had to offer, the more I became interested in talking to our then general manager, Tex Ward, about pickleball. And our very first pickleball court was at the Thousand Oaks Community Center, just to the west of the tennis courts. We took a basketball court, which is permanently there, and made it into a pickleball court. So that's where it got started here in the Canal Valley. But talking about demographics years ago, as you know, tennis was a big popular sport, and we put in a lot of tennis courts. We kept getting more and more groups like you coming to our board meetings, and we need more tennis courts and so forth. And that has waned in comparison to pickleball. So we see these cyclic programs, but I think pickleball is really here to stay. It isn't a fad. And as the population ages and the young people are getting interested, and I think this is something that I know the Park District Board and staff are totally behind it. But again, it comes down to budgeting and our priorities, and we do have to serve our entire community. But if we can get some wealthy individual who really willing to invest, we'll make it happen. So thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up just by saying, because I'm one of the two board members on the pickleball subcommittee, that this is not something that's going to drop off the radar, that we will sooner rather than later continue our meetings with staff, both parks and recreation staff, to see how we can move forward on this. In the meantime, as Director Lang said, if you happen to know someone who's got a spare $1 million or $2 million floating around, we'd be more than happy to talk with you or talk with them. So again, thank you all very much for coming out this evening. Do we have anybody online who was waiting to speak publicly? Okay. All right. Did you have something, Jim?
Something minor, just to add.
Okay.
Are you done? Or
yeah.
And I just wanted to add something kind of hopeful and exciting. I was down with senior staff at Pleasant Valley Rec and Park and asked them where they were. And I know they're closer than we are to their next. I think they're looking at maybe they're hoping, 12 to start, but it might be 6 to 12 and then as many as 18. So I know that Pleasant Valley is working on it, and our next door neighbors in Westlake, I guess, are looking at 4 courts right by the Y there on the hill. That's really cool. But what folks don't realize yet, and we really haven't gone out to let people know, is the new teen center, which is open to senior center users up until teens get out of school, is got 2 pickleball courts. So we just built those and they opened about 6 weeks ago. We just haven't let people know about it really yet. So,
And
yeah.
so
Way to
to
drop the
add
kicker.
to that, it is a multi-use court. So it is a basketball court that is striped also with volleyball and 2 pickleball courts.
So
It's outdoors.
it's not ideal, but it's pickleball.
Yep.
The Global Center has a coffee shop right next door.
There you go.
Can go have breakfast.
And the Global Center is really, it's for 18 and over, but it's, you know, kind of the unspoken thing. It's 50 and over. So I'm a Global Senior Center, you know.
You're too young.
participant. You don't have to, but they, you know, that's the norm.
I don't think,
Anyway,
I
all
don't
right.
think they card people though, do they?
No.
So with that, I'm closing the public hearing. You all are welcome to stay for the balance of our meeting, but if you leave now, I'll try not to be too hurt. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8, items for discussion. Don't believe we have anything. New items, 9A, facility rental fees and deposits for filming fees. Who's going to start on this?
There she went. That was Rochelle, but she's.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Hard to keep track of you, Rochelle.
All righty, I get set up here. So thank you, Chair Uffer, members of the board. Tonight I am going to be doing a presentation in regards to facility rental fees and deposit and filming fees. This is something that annually the staff looks at and we bring to the board. So in your report, just a couple of the highlights is the non-refundable application fee for facility rentals was last increased in 2012. Filming fees were last increased in 2014. The last increase in deposits was made in 2017. In light of COVID, we actually didn't increase any fees during that. So nothing was increased until 2020, or nothing was increased in 2020 or 2021. So in 2022, the facility rental and field use fees were increased by 5% to align with the district rates more closely with regional market rates. So now we're looking here. So one of the things that was different this year is we actually had an ad hoc committee that was approved in June of 2022 so that they could join us. And it was Chair Huffer and Director Nichols. And this was because there's been a lot of discussion. I think I've brought it up a couple times with the boards with the fees that we have. So we have 5 classifications for field fees. And with those 5 classification, there are 5 different price ranges. And one is 25% of the base rate fee. And so I've been looking at and studying, trying to figure out how we increase the fees and get more in line with some of our neighbors. So we, the board decided to have Director Huffer and Nichols join the staff in a conversation. So we made a presentation to them. Got some feedback from them, and then we made a presentation to a sports summit. Sports summit had the first, I think, sports summit was in 2012 when they first did fees for the sports groups on the fields. And so we had that meeting, a sports summit meeting, and presented some suggestions that we had come up with to change the fee schedule. And we had some positive feedback. And so tonight we're going to kind of go through that and a bunch of other things. Before I get started, I want to give a huge kudos to James, our analyst, no longer our administrative assistant. All of the details, the statistical information, he has pulled all that and he has made this presentation. So he is here to answer any research questions that you may ask me that I don't have the answer to. So hopefully this will work. And I talk with my hands, so hopefully I won't move a whole bunch of things. So I think I kind of discussed this. So staff recommendations, we are looking to adjust the base rate for all of our rental fees other than the athletic fields by 5%. We're looking to adjust the non-refundable application fee, which is currently $12 to $15. The last time it was increased was in 2012, and it went from $10 to $12, and it has been, and it was $10 since 1998. Minor adjustments are being recommended to the pool rental rates based on fair market value and user classification. And no changes are recommended for the refundable deposit. And all of this information is in your packet also. So we have an actual new thing with picnic rentals. So Andy and Tim and Dana and James have been talking about how Lakeside is so big. We only rent it really for large parties. And a lot of people like that particular location. So we felt that there was an opportunity to implement some new rental opportunities at that facility. So as you can see in the dark and the light green, we are sectioning it off to section A, which includes the barbecue, and section B, which includes the stage. And the black circle or square that's in the middle, there are tables there, but they would not use those tables. And so we're going to see how this works out for rentals, and it's a much smaller fee. So this would allow us to do 2 user groups at that facility, and it would be $65 for section A, and it would be $55 for section B, still allowing us to rent it at the full facility, which is $147. So additional staff recommendations, we would adjust the CRPD. So CRPD has a staff rate. So when you have a rental and a staff is needed for that rental, usually in outdoor rentals, it's 150 people or more, some kind of special event. Then we add on an addition, we charge a staff for a staff person. Indoors, it really depends on our indoor facility. If we only have one person working at that particular day or time, then we have to have another staff come in to work that rental. So we have one rate right now. It's $22 an hour. So what we're recommending is for the inside staff that we change that rate to $23. And the reason why is in our inside facilities, it's my recreation staff that are doing it. So $23 will cover the base rates and benefits and all that good stuff of what I charge or pay staff. What we're asking to do is change the rate for our grounds guys. So our grounds guys make more per hour, they're full time, it might be overtime, stuff to that effect. So if you're renting outside and it's usually, like I said, about 150 or more, or some kind of a large special event. So it's not that many actual rentals that we ask them to pay for additional staff. We would like to move that up to $60 per hour for the additional staff. Again, all the staff that are doing that are making more per hour. So this would allow us to actually cover the cost of their hourly wage and benefits and all that good stuff. So lifeguards on duty, we're looking to move them up $1 from $22 to $23 an hour. And then adjust the rate for the pool manager on duty from $25 to $26. Lifeguards and our pool staff usually make a little bit more just with all the trainings and stuff that they have. So also we're asking to adjust the park ranger on duty hourly fee. This is usually with film rentals that the rangers are involved with that. So it's more in open space. Again, this is being moved up due to the fact of what their hourly wages are and their benefits cost to actually be covered. So from $57 to $74. Other than that, with fees, I have no other recommendations. So now I'm going to go into athletic field use fees, because this is different. As I said, I'm not looking to bump the base rate up right now. I'm looking to make some additional changes. So why do we have fees? We have an ordinance manual. The ordinance manual says that we shall establish reasonable fees for the district property fees and classifications, and they'll be reviewed annually, which we're doing now. So expenses that we accrue just to run our fields, water, electricity, labor, materials, supplies. So what we did when we took this cost analysis, and Tom was here and he started this for me, and then Andrew has been able to continue it, is we look at all of our parks, community parks, play fields, that have sports fields on them. So they have to have soccer fields, baseball fields in order for them to be included in this gathering of information for how much we pay for it. So the expenses occurred. We have over 240 acres of land among the athletic fields and community parks. Over the last decade, the annual cost to maintain the fields has increased 41%. And that's roughly from 2.7 to $3.8 million. And that's represented by the yellow line on the top of the screen. In the same period, the base rate of our rental fees has increased just by 26% from $18 to $22.60 an hour. That's represented by the green line on the bottom. So you can see that there's a very big gap on what we're making and what we're spending to provide athletic fields in our community. So who pays these fees? Our user groups do, and they have different classifications. So we always go off of our base rate for everything. This is what is supposed to be like the going rate comparable to what other people are paying in the area. That's what we consider 100%. These are in what we would charge someone in district. Then we have an out of district rate that we would charge people at 150%, a 75% rate, which is for nonprofit organizations. Then we go down to 50 for nonprofit adult sports organizations and clubs, and 25% in our base rate for nonprofit youth organizations. These classifications descriptions are in our ordinance manual. I am not asking to change any of these descriptions. What I'm asking to look at is how much we charge everybody. So we have a group called, and I always miss this, our priority allocation group, which Deanna deals with twice a year and Kylie deals with. And these are our user groups. It's a historical thing. They've been with us for years and years and years. And when we at some point met, like we were built out, we couldn't build any more fields. Then we stopped what we were allowing people to get. So these 24 organizations that are still with us, they every year. So if last year they had 200 hours, this year they're allowed to ask for 200 hours. They can give back some, they may not need that many, but they cannot ask for more. So these 25 groups are approved, they get priority allocation. So as you can see, where most people are paying are in that 50 and 25% rate, which is literally, I think the 25% is like $5 an hour per field. And the 50% I think is 11 something per hour per field. James is going to throw something at me if I'm wrong. So in here are who those organizations are. The non-highlighted ones, the Thousand Oaks badminton is indoor and the Newberry Park basketball are indoor. So they're in these classifications, so they will be affected because I'm going to propose that we change the classifications, but they're not in the field expenses. So how do we compare to our neighbors and other people that are doing what we're doing? So most agencies do have multiple user groups or tiers based off of residency, nonprofit, and age group. However, CRPD currently has 5. Most other agencies have 2 or 3. So here are our neighbors. And as you can see, there's only 2 organizations that have 4 different prices. Everyone else is under, and we have 5 different price ranges. So what classifications do they have? So Moore Park has 4. They have basically like a nonprofit, an in-district, an in-district business, and an out-of-district. Rancho has 2 adult or youth programs. And Pleasant Valley has 4 also. So they have residents organizations, in district residents, and then out of district. And the MOU one is kind of like what we have. We do have our general manager is able to, for certain partners that we have, waive fees completely. So no nearby agency has less than 50%, and we have a 25%. So how do our rates compare? This is our base rate. So our base rate is 2260, which in the last couple of slides I showed you, nobody in our one organization in our allocation pays the base rate. Everybody else pays 25 or 50%. And as you can see, our base rate is kind of in the middle of what other people are paying as their base rate. So what we're recommending is to keep the definitions, as I said before, of the classifications of the types of people. That's in our ordinance manual. So if you're a class 1, you're still going to be a class 1 youth organization, 51% or more in district participants. What we're asking is to make changes with the percentage value based on the classes as followed. We'd like to move class 1 from 25% to 50%, and class 2 from 50% to 75% over a 5-year period. We will continue to evaluate the base rate, because the base rate has to be annually looked at, because if we don't look at it annually and make adjustments to it, then we're going to lose ground at some point, and then it'll be we're behind the 8 ball and need to adjust something very high rather than doing annual increases of 5% or less. So this is what this would look like. CRPD would have 4 fees. So class 1 would be at 50%. Classes 2 and 3 would be at 75%. Class 4 is our in-district resident organizations, and class 6 is out of district. So this is what it would look like over a 5-year change. So currently class 1's paying $565 and class 2 is paying $1130. So year 1, starting July 1 of 2023, we would move it up from 25 to 30 and from 50 to 55, increasing their rates little more than $1, and so forth and such forth, leaving the base rate for this year at 2260. Next year we would look at the base rate. So the financial impact on the organizations, and when I say this, I'm specifically talking about those that are in our allocation. So class 1 organizations would ultimately see 100% increase over the 5 years, bringing their hourly filled rate up to $1130 if the base rate doesn't change over the next 5 years. Okay, because if the base rate changes, then it could go up a little bit more. Okay. Class 2 organizations would ultimately see a 50% increase over the 5 years, ending at $1695, again, if the base rate doesn't change. Rancho Simi's current youth rates for fields are $16, $21 for soccer fields, adult rates, $18. So again, if you look at these unhighlighted numbers, they're still higher than what I'm proposing that we go to. So we're still at that point a better deal in town than what some of our neighbors are. So at the end of 5 years, the average impact to each organization would be less than $10,000. And then you can see in the bottom part, the 24, 25 priority or allocation organizations, 17 of them would pay less than $10,000 in additional fees per year. 4 will pay between 10 and 20, 3 will pay between 20 and 30, and 1 will pay about 50,000. Now, what you have to remember is that's because they use 9,000 annual hours of permitted field. So that's a lot of hours. So it equates to $5.50 per hour, which is what they're paying now. So basically with this, the solid lines is the slide I showed you before. The broken lines, what James did was take the average and let's assume that whatever the increase was over the last 10 years, that's going to be the same. It might be much higher. I don't know. And then the proposal that we are asking for, you can see in the green. So really where we are right now is we cost recover about 10% of what we spend on fields. I am not asking for any more by making this change. At the end of 5-10 years, we will still only be at 10% if the numbers don't change drastically. Again, this is without base rate going up. So there is the potential every year for us to increase base rate if we needed to. So with that, I am available and James is available for questions.
Questions?
Why don't you start at that end?
All right, I'll start at this end.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Director Buss.
Okay, I have a few questions I wrote down. So my first question goes to the Lakeside Pavilion, the way it's divided up. I was curious if you were going to offer it the opposite way so that two parties could be using the barbecue area, because I noticed you are having it sectioned off for only one area. So did you guys consider doing it both ways?
I don't know that they considered doing that. You have to use the mic. We'll share.
That wasn't really considered just based on the fact that the barbecue area is not easily shareable between two groups and just wanting to allow privacy for whichever group is using it. There are 3 barbecues there, but they're right side by side to each other. So we decided to just allow one group to have that and have full use of it. And then the other group would just get the benefit of having a stage which has electricity available.
Can we do it both ways?
Yeah, we could and see if
I
people are
mean-
willing to share the area with each other.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be surprised if people wouldn't care about that, because that's just your food prep area. And then you have like the two sides, that one side, you get this side of the serving tables and then you get this side.
Yeah.
We can look into it. and see
Just
what-
thinking about like planning events, and it's like you need the food prep area, at the picnic tables.
Yeah.
So, okay, that was one question. And then, so on the field workers' pay for the outdoor areas, that's going from $22 to $60. Is that what the actual employee is being paid, the $60, or are we adding to that fee at all?
No,
That's
so
Andrew and Shelley.
yeah, and so the rate was prior for a part-time employee. And so as Rochelle was saying, that would be like a full-time grounds worker. So depending, but it would be it includes it's not just their hourly rate, it's all their benefits and things like that.
So we're not adding anything over it.
No, it's
Oh,
just,
okay.
it's just to break even on the time of the employee being there.
Yeah, no,
And,
that's.
and
totally
it would
fine.
be for expanded, like 100 to 150 person events and things like that. So
And
it
a
doesn't
lot-
happen so typical.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of our guys that are folks that are out in the field that do that, it ends up being overtime for them because they've
Yeah.
already worked a 40-hour week and now it might be we're scheduling them to work additional hours. or
Yeah,
so.
no, for sure. Cause they come for the chili cook-off. Like Ziggy comes and helps me on Saturday night, which I know is not his normal shift.
This won't go into effect until July 1st.
It's fine. Hey, look, I am willing to pay. Okay. I just make my events profitable so I can pay these things. So I actually think because most organizations do charge something over. So that's why I was just curious if we are, but that's fine. And then, okay, my other question on the athletics, which you went over, I was wondering how much more income it would bring in for the fields, but you went over it. So, and then we are not adjusting. My other question was, we are not adjusting the base rate this year.
Not this year. We feel that the 2260 that we're currently charging, as you saw, it was kind of in the middle. And our best practice has been that we try not to be over, we try not to be under, we kind of try to be in a happy medium. So we were not proposing that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I'm thinking that with everything, the cost of everything going up, that it's an interesting year to not adjust the base rate, considering the cost of everything you've used goes up.
Well, and that's why we kind of said, if we're doing this change of the 5%, that's going to affect everyone. Obviously, next year, if we need to go up, we're allowing us the ability to every year change the base rate if we need to.
Okay, and then this probably goes into, so is it the goal of CRPD to stay at a 10% recovery? That was my last.
Yeah, so it was in my time that we actually implemented a fee for using the fields at all.
Okay.
So the philosophy of the district in its early years was youth sports. The fact that we, the public entity, are not hiring staff to run the soccer league and run the baseball league and run it's all outsourced to parent volunteers. And the theory, this has been handed down to me, is the philosophy was we want to totally support that great volunteer community sport ethic. And, by supporting the parent volunteers, we'd use all the tax money we collected to maintain the sports fields, which are also used as parks. Just the grass can be used by the general community when it's not an actual sports field. So things have evolved over time. I would say youth sports has kind of professionalized a little more. There's more money made. It's not all everybody's not an AYSO where everyone's a volunteer. There's paid people in some of the sports organizations now. There's the amount of money folks are spending on uniforms and the kind of the cool stuff. It's turned into, it's evolved, right? So when we just last looked at it really close, it was I think we were at 9 or 10% of the cost of maintaining those fields, and we were only collecting 9 or 10. So that's really all that it comes from. But it's a completely board sort of philosophical approach to how much taxpayers want to pay for the fields and how much the user group should pay for the fields. And there is no magic right answer.
Okay, yeah, because I was curious on that, because if we also were handed a budget that was made in the 70s, was the last time we had a revenue increase from the property taxes, right? So that's where I'm looking at. I'm thinking, well, how do we budget off of that when it seems like we're growing and having a gap. But so if we're able to stay at that 10%, and that's what the philosophy is, okay, fine. But I feel like that could easily slip away with not adjusting the base rate, and with costs going up, then we get down and we're lower and lower. Well, then we don't have any money to do anything for anybody besides just what we're doing. Right. So that's why I was just curious, is this a standard in our practice that we're doing 10% and staying there, but it's not.
No.
Okay.
And I think as I've been looking at it over the years, is trying to figure out how do we make sure we don't lose money and make that gap bigger. So I was actually quite happy with this change when the numbers came out, and it kept us pretty even. Now, this comes to the board every year. So we would be looking at the base rates. We'd be looking at, do we have a year where it goes really up? And we'd be able to start guiding that, engaging that, and we'd be in a much better position because we wouldn't have such low rates and a majority of our folks in those lower rates.
Right. Yeah. And then it won't be such a big adjustment if you're adjusting every year versus
That's
not adjusting every year, and then you have to do a bigger increase. So, I think it's easier as a parent to absorb smaller increases every year than big jumps in a couple of years.
That is my goal. As you
Yeah.
notice from the one sheet in here, there's a lot of it kind of is a little sporadic on how things go up. So, or years and spans between things. So I would love to be able to, even ask the board, and it's not in here, but I would love to be able to have the ability to go, hey, we have the ability to increase fees up to 5%, not to exceed 5% on any given year based off of CPI and what's going on. And then if it ever needed to be more than 5% on the base rate, then we would come to the board on that. So that would just put us in a really nice regular kind of thing that we're looking at it. And it's a 2 to 5% kind of increase every year.
Right.
if
Which
needed.
I just, for a healthy business, it's better to be doing that than to be making big jumps. And then also for our customers or, the sports groups, I think it would be better for them to be able to budget, and the parents as well, knowing, oh, okay, we're going to have this amount. So that was just my thoughts on the presentation. It was great. Thank you so much. I loved all the research. I love that. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I ask questions and he goes and finds it for me.
I love that. Love it.
Director Lang.
Yes, based on Director Buss's comments on liking all the statistics and so forth, the information you provided, and I know James contributed a lot to that. This is so much more, just in time, years ago, we never got all this data and, thought process and so forth. So I'm really pleased at the advances that you and your department is making. It's really good. A question on page 37, the first page of your staff presentation is second to the last paragraph. You talked about 24 sports organizations were invited, but you didn't mention how many showed up. And then you also made a general comment that feedback was supportive. Can you be more definitive as to what
Sure.
that feedback was? And
Yeah,
and then I'm going to ask another. Go ahead.
okay. Yeah, I think there were 8 that actually organizations that showed up to the meeting. And
What were they? What were the organizations?
soccer, softball, rugby, lacrosse. I think there were a couple soccer, couple baseball. And then the general feedback, I had 2 people from the group walk up to me and basically just say, we understand what you need to do. Thanks for letting us know, type of thing. So yeah, I was not, our team was not sure what to expect because, when fees get raised, it's tough. And we're definitely not a department looking to make things tough on people, but it needs to change a little.
Okay.
So, but that was the feedback. So the few people that said something were like, we understand.
Okay, now a question for Chair Huffer. In association with AYSO, has any of this information been directly given to them,
Yeah.
transmitted to them?
There were 3 AYSO people there, 2 from Region 42, which is Newbury Park, and 1 from Region 9. Was the Region 9 representative who went up to Rochelle afterwards and said, we certainly understand. He loved that the line chart showing the increasing gap between expenses and revenues. He thought, that tells the whole story right there. The other factor is, I haven't looked in detail at the AYSO budget in recent years, but the field fees represent a relatively small percentage of the total costs that are being incurred by the region. And I suspect that's true for most other youth sports, that the cost of the fields, and particularly when you compare it to neighboring organizations, whether it's other park districts or cities, the cost of the fields is still really reasonable and not the biggest factor that the organizations are facing.
Okay, that's important to get that kind of, information and feedback, and because that's where the rubber hits the road. Parents have to, eventually shell out more money.
And
good.
I believe one of the AYSO people, I gave them our presentation and they showed it at their board meeting also. So
Good. Well,
Yeah, that was at one of our Region 9 board meetings. So, yeah.
good presentation, Michelle and James. Thank you.
Yes, Director Cussworth.
Well, a couple of my questions have been answered. One of them was how would the fees increase for the children playing soccer or baseball? It sounds like it's not going to be that much if they're pretty happy with it. So
yeah, that doesn't come from us. So it would be how the individual organizations decide to pass that on. If they, if they change their budget and take it out of a different pot, or if they pass the $1.50 on to the.
correct. But you did talk with them. And so that's what I was interested in. There was a presentation made. They seemed to understand. They seemed to think that was fine. From your presentation, I thought that these fees seemed very reasonable. And I thought you're increasing them over the 5 years seemed very reasonable. And I'm not really knowing how much parents are paying for their children to be in these leagues, but obviously they're able to afford this. It's an affordable rate for them, you know, if they're not complaining. And it seemed like it would be a very small fee that would be passed on to the parents. So, and being that we are highly competitive, even low compared to our neighboring communities. Plus, I've had people who have come to tournaments here who have told me that our fields are maintained at a better rate than many other places. So we wouldn't want to have our fields, the maintenance be going down in any way. I mean, I would think that was very important to keep that up. I think you mentioned this, but on all of these other things, these are most likely the same. You didn't, all of these other room fees. You know,
So
you
all
have
of
pages and pages of room fees. These pretty much stayed the same. I mean, I didn't
So
look
on
at every
all-
single one.
On all of these, basically, there is the class 4. That line all the way down, every single one of those will go up 5%. Except for the field fee one.
I'm just talking about all the rooms.
Yeah, that's 5%.
All the
Everything's
the
going up
base rate
5%.
For everything that we charge, I'm recommending that it goes up.
Okay,
5%.
so-
And then so what'll change also is up here on we don't put the percentage up there. So all of these folks will change, and if they're in class 1 paying for a room or whatever the item is, they will now be paying 30% of the base rate.
So that's going to be above what you have listed here, or is this the price that you're going to be charging? That's my
The
question.
proposed
proposed.
one is the
Yeah.
new price.
That's what I meant.
Yes,
The new price.
yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So that's the
There
new
are
base
pages in there
rate
that show
with
old
the
prices.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
the
30 and the
current,
55.
There's a proposed, so you gotta compare the two.
Oh, there's the
Get your
current.
calculator out.
Okay, yeah,
Make
well,
sure
I
that
didn't,
makes
I didn't
sense.
want to make it that hard. I was trying to look at current here, proposed here, current here, proposed here, all on one page. And so I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. My other question was on the Canal Creek North with the breaking up of those
Uh-huh.
two areas. Let's say you rent the stage and nobody rents the other side. Can you just go ahead and use the barbecue? Or do you
No,
have
because the
to?
barbecues are locked and everything.
Okay, so that was
you
my
would have to
question.
have access to it. In order to use the barbecues at that picnic area, you pay extra for that.
Okay.
So, and then it would be unlocked and stuff. So the benefit of using the other side, and this is all kind of a trial thing, you guys. So it'll probably change as we figure out no one uses it, someone uses it, but we always, it's at such a large space and it costs so much more than other areas. And we're just trying to figure out how to get more people in the picnic areas. So the other thing that they're looking at possibly doing is, being able to rent it in the morning to one party and rent it in the afternoon to another. We haven't quite got there yet, but that's another thing that we're looking at just because it is a really nice picnic area. And so, we just thought for right now, splitting it up that way would give us some base to try to figure out, are people willing to pay the little extra and they really want the barbecue and they want to cook? Because we have tons of people that just go out there and they just want to hang out there and play their music or whatever. They're not cooking.
Well, my next question was, how many people actually rent those? Or how many people just go and it's like, oh, nobody's here, we'll set up our party?
I don't know the exact number of the rentals. I could get that for you if you need it. But a lot, if it doesn't have a sign out that it's rent, even when it does have a sign out that you're not supposed to sit there, there's still people sitting there until someone shows up. So, I mean, people use it all the time. But
Okay.
it's normally Lakeside is used for a larger rental party, because if it's a smaller party, they're not going to pay that amount.
No, they just go there. It seems to me like there's just a lot of people that just go there.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering how often people formally rent it,
Yeah.
but,
Lakeside's usually bigger events.
okay, thank you.
Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions, and I think I forewarned you at our ad hoc committee that I was probably going to ask you some of the questions that I asked you during the committee meeting, just so everybody could hear what I was thinking of. But I wanted to follow up on a philosophical approach, as our general manager was explaining, the initiation of fees. Several times was mentioned here, referring to rates compared to the regional market prices, how we fare with our local agencies, whether it be city or the rec and park districts. And then also expenses related to field maintenance, I guess, facility maintenance would fit that same thing. So it's a maintenance issue and a regional market price issue. I'm not even talking about the staff hourly rates and things like that. But with that premise, philosophically, why should fees be increased at all? And I'm not thinking about this time, but I'm just thinking in the future, just like we just set a fee, and why would we? And the reason I ask that is regional market rates is, well, okay, but our community is here in this community. They're paying their taxes here for their parks here. They don't intend probably to go have their picnic or their birthday party in Simi Valley or Moore Park or Malibu. And the expenses of these facilities are 10 times what the proposed revenue is. So it's just kind of, again, kind of a philosophical, why raise fees at all?
So I'm going to answer it from a staff person's side, and really it's a philosophical question for you guys. But if we don't raise fees or charge fees for things, then other things have to stop. So then we're balancing, well, what are we doing now? Because now I've got to find $500,000 somewhere else because I'm going to pay for these sports fields. Because right now we're paying 400 and in 5 years might be like $500,000 for these sports fields, which is not very much. So is it more fair to have everybody pay a little bit? Or is it fair to have some groups not pay anything? But if we take that money away, I now have to find $500,000 in my budget to cut back.
Mr. General Manager, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's actually pretty much what I would say too. The reality is what we collect from the taxpayers for property tax and the benefit assessment, 20 million ballpark, but yet we're spending 25, 30 million. So that's also programmatic fee revenue, but basically the revenue that we don't get, we would need to cut in other areas. So we would just shrink down to we're primarily, providing parks and fields. And in most agencies, when you have to make really hard choices about shrinking, Rochelle hates to hear this, but you keep your parks and your facilities that the general public can use without any kind of help from the public entity, i.e. a program instructor or, some sort of rec person. And you just kind of, okay, all we can do are provide the facilities and, all the other stuff starts to suffer and atrophy. So that's kind of what happens.
Okay. I could picture in my own mind one of the reasons that I would argue to keep up with the regional rates is as a deterrent for other entities wanting to come and use our facilities because they're cheaper than anybody else. So that more of an outside, like we've seen with some of the soccer clubs that come from the valley and want to try and go for it.
They pay more.
Well,
Get excited about.
but if the rates aren't increased, is what I'm saying, then it becomes that it's now becomes more affordable. And so we have to keep the rates up as a deterrent to keep that from happening. One of the things that I'm still trying to struggle with, and I already asked Rochelle this before, is if the revenue stream from these fees goes into the recreation program, why then are we using the argument for the expense to maintain fields, which is in another department? Because those revenue fees are not used to maintain those fields. They're used for recreation programs. So I'm trying to find the nexus between that argument of the maintenance is why we're doing it, and yet fees don't go to maintain the fields.
I would say because we all play really nice in the sandbox and we share, but I'll let Melissa add anything extra to that.
Sure. So it's not like a direct line where that check I get goes to them. It's all in the big general fund, and the general fund gets distributed. So it's a way of coming up with a reasonable assumption of how much that field costs. That's where the tie is, but it's not a direct, I took this money and gave it for this process. It all goes to the general fund, and the general fund is used for all the activities. So it's just a way to come up with a reasonable calculation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I guess I just was trying to wrestle in my own mind, what, if the revenues are used for recreation, then why are we using that argument? And I was just wondering if you get that same question from, well, only if the people that are paying the fees understand where those fees are going.
No, I mean, another way I would say it, and I don't know, you can correct me, Melissa, if I'm wrong, but the revenues might be coming into our department because we're manning it, we're staffing it, we're doing the hours and whatnot for it, but that also offsets what we are being given from the general fund. So as our bottom line, does that make sense? It offsets that.
And I might throw in one other thing. I use the example of, if we didn't get the revenue, then rec would suffer. And I just say that because that's what most agencies choose to do. Like this agency could say, we're not generating enough revenue. We don't feel like for the use of the sports fields, and we say we're going to stop all field refurbishments, and then they just start to wear out. And then you remember the old school soccer fields where it was just a dirt stripe between the goal boxes, and there's a little bit of grass on the sides, and that, like, we could start to, without revenue, you would start to do that kind of thing, right?
And if I could, it's an accounting situation. You could make recreation responsible for paying all of the field maintenance costs, crews and water and maintenance and all the other stuff, make recreation pay for those costs on the sports fields, and then parks and planning would pay for the water and maintenance and everything on the non-athletic fields. It's the same money. It's going to come from the same place, going to the same place. But if you wanted to change the accounting to have a closer nexus between revenues and expenses, I'm sure that could be done.
Yeah.
One of the things that I mentioned to Rochelle in our committee meeting was maybe it's just, as an alternative, maybe the board just decided that, well, then we need to subsidize this more to make it affordable for the families to be able to have their youth, their families play these youth sports. That maybe we need to, allocate that's important enough to the community to do something like that. Whether that actually pencils out or whatever, but when I see the fact that, the revenue is only 10% of the costs, well, we're already doing that, because we're subsidizing in essence 90%, so to speak, theoretically, again, accounting wise, because we're not generating the revenue to pay for 100% of those fields. But then it also goes back to the fact that those fields are available for all the families to use when they're not reserved for other activities. So that was just some of the things I was thinking about. Again, I don't really have any, arguments one way or the other, say why we should or shouldn't, but I was just kind of contemplating this, again, as a parent, as a grandparent, is having to pay these fees, why we do the things that we do. And then just also as a district, the philosophical approach for how do we, yes, keep the organization afloat and yet still making it usable and friendly for the families where it's now not an extra burden. And I appreciate your comment, Mr. Chair, about the AYSO and how it's, every little bit makes a difference on costs, but it's not a make or break type of financial position where if the region has to pay for a little bit more, well, that means the families are going to have to pay a little bit more, but it's not significant. So where it makes it where it's not going to happen. It's just a matter of budgeting for it. And I presume, in fact, I'm pretty sure that you folks have the same thing, just like the Park District does for families that maybe can't afford. They offer financial assistance. And I believe AYSO probably has similar programs where you assist those families. So somehow we make sure that the kids that want to play soccer or ride horses or whatever it is, get to do that. And that's ultimately what I want to make sure we're able to do, is to keep that moving forward. And not raise rates just to raise rates or fees, but there's a reason behind it and we can support it. And I think that's the important part. So do appreciate all the extra effort and the understandable graphs, which are very, very helpful. So thank you very much for taking the time to put those together. Thank you.
Okay, James, I know you did all the work behind the scenes and Rochelle gets all of the credit, but thank you for putting all of this together. I do like the approach that, as I said, increasing the group 1 and group 2 fees over a 5-year period. It's going to spread it out enough that I don't think it's going to have a substantial impact on the end user groups. And in answer to Director Lang's question, the cost of the fee of field fees is a relatively small portion of the entire cost, whether it's baseball or soccer or lacrosse or whatever the case might be. But by increasing and redefining the group rates going forward, it would be, I think, easier to each year look at the base rate and just make one change in the base rate, which is reflected across all the various groups. So that makes sense. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but you were suggesting that somewhere down the line, you might like to have some ability to do those increases without coming to the board. We can cross that bridge when we get to it, but that's not going to happen tonight. I was just curious with the 4 or 5 different classifications of the total revenues that come from those 25 groups. I'm sure it's more than 50%, but is it 75 or 90% comes from groups 1 and 2, or somewhere in that range?
The vast majority of the revenue comes from the allocation process, which is the class 1 and 2 groups.
Yeah, okay. So as you're increasing the base rate and increasing the fees on those 2 groups, which provides the bulk of the field revenues, that's going to have the biggest impact. So I think it's great. Just a wild guess that you had a list of, I can't remember, it was 10 or 11 groups that would be less than 10,000 and other groups. And I'm guessing maybe the one group that is going to pay more than 50,000.
It's Oaks Football Club.
Oh, really?
Not you.
Ha!
Anyway,
I lost my bet. Okay, all right. Yeah,
And it was
it's all
because they
his
used
fault.
9,000 hours of field time.
Really?
That's why.
Huh,
Yeah.
okay. Interesting. All right. And just, the lakeside thing, as you said, it's an experiment to see what would happen. And it's a real small part of the overall picture here, but I'm just curious if one group comes in and wants to rent half the facility, another group wants to rent the full facility for the same time. Are you going to give the full facility
First come,
priority?
first serve.
We're actually,
First come, first serve.
the goal that our reservations coordinator has in mind is that he will not rent only half of it until the date is 30 days before. So if an organization does want the full facility, they'll have until a month before their event to book it. And once that is passed, he'll open it up to, okay, you can just take half or half.
Okay, well, you said it'd be interesting to see how that shakes out, but it is, again, pretty small part of the whole overall picture. So are there any other questions or comments from board members? If not, we have 2 separate resolutions that we need to take action on. Is there any reason that we can't do both of them at the
No,
same
we have to be
time?
separate.
Because we're gonna read them, so it's separate.
Okay. Want to make Elaine work harder by having to read them. So, okay, so do I have a motion for the first resolution, Director Lang?
Yes, it's my pleasure that we recommend we adopt resolution number 042023-A, implementing a 5-year plan to transition rental user group classes as presented by Rochelle and in the staff report. That it be read in title only and all further readings be waived.
Well, you're good at that. Do I have a second? Yes, Director Buss. May we have that read, Madam Secretary?
Yes, you may. Resolution number 042023-A, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Conejo Recreation and Park District adopting a fee schedule per district ordinance.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the resolution? Aye. Any opposed? If not, the motion carries unanimously. We now have a second resolution. Director Buss. I'm
No.
sorry, Director Cussworth. Looked one way and talked to him. Director Cussworth.
Adopt resolution 042023-B, setting the facility rental rates and deposits and filming fees for the Conejo Recreation and Parks District effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, that it be read in title only, and all future readings be waived.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Director Buss. May we have that resolution read?
Resolution number 042023-B, a resolution of the Director of the Conejo Recreation and Park District adopting a fee schedule per district.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second and a reading of the resolution. Are there any questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. James, thank you. You two are welcome to stay for the entire meeting if you wish.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to make a quick question kind of in reference to an experience I had this afternoon after the event at the Lakeside Pavilion. It was that time when I was ready to leave, and so I was with my knee issue. I was really hurting, and there's one of your maintenance guys. He's only been there a few months, I think, assigned to that park, and he was responding to a woman representing a group that's renting it tomorrow, Friday, and she was concerned about the condition, all the stuff that was taking place there this afternoon, and will it be all clean and this and that, and he handled it very well. And she, I waited until this conversation was over with, and she seemed to be very pleased. And then after talking to him, I saw her move to another part and look around. So she was evaluating it in reference to her group's use. But your young man handled it very well. And I can't remember his name, but he's only been there a short period of time. So you compliment him. Plus, he gave me a ride to my car.
There it is.
All right, moving along, item 9B. This sounds like something that maybe Mr. Mooney might be handling.
Yes, thank you, Chair Huffer, members of the board. As you're aware, we contract some services at our facilities and parks, and we are bringing tonight a recommendation for a few, but this one specifically is our custodial contract. We contract custodial work at our centers as well as a few of our field restrooms, so it's 12 total sites. We started the request for proposal process in the beginning of the year. The current contract ends June 30th of 2023. And so we held an RFP to get proposals to be able to provide for a new contract to serve our facilities. We had 3 companies that submitted proposals. Staff reviewed the written proposals as well as interviewed all 3 companies. And based on the experience, prior work, as well as the responsiveness to the request, and going through the process with the interviews, Executive Facility Services is being recommended for the contract. So this would be a 5-year contract, similar to how we did it 7 years ago. So it's a 5-year contract with 2 1-year extensions. And the contract would start July 1 of 2023. EFS, to abbreviate, their name, has over 20 years experience working with the district. They provide proper service. They communicate well with our staff in order to complete their work. They're headquartered out of Camarillo. They have contracts with a couple other local agencies, City of Thousand Oaks, Agora, as well as a little bit further out, Riverside County Libraries, San Bernardino County Schools that they've worked with, and they are our current custodial provider. So there is an increase from prior years of it's about $2,500 a month. However, that price has been intact with a couple ad services over the years, but basically for the past 7 years, we've been pretty happy with their services and consistent pricing with them. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Let's go this way. Director Nichols.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Moody, thank you for the information. I have a couple of questions that are probably relevant for both agenda items here. But in looking at the very detailed list of the expectations of what facilities are to be cleaned and all the areas and the different types of cleaning, which I understand is absolutely necessary to make sure that the expectations are clear as to what is to be done. I'm just wondering, how is this verified that it's actually done? Is somebody going around with a checklist? So even daily in some of these facilities, just curious how that's taken care of.
Yeah, so nearly impossible to go to every site for the individual. Matt Parker, the contract supervisor, was here tonight for Tony's presentation. He manages these contracts. So he would manage custodial as well as the landscape services contract. And we have a lot of eyes and ears throughout all of our facilities. We rely on the supervisor managing those contracts, as well as their other field supervisors, as well as myself, as well as our superintendent, and our groundskeepers that are throughout the district, as well as our maintenance workers. So we have a lot of eyes, and believe it or not, members of the public will let us know if something is subpar, as well as we do get support from Rochelle's staff, since it is at their building. So if they're seeing issues, they're obviously the daily users of especially a restroom to keep the restrooms clean and things like that. So it's really a team effort, and it's the communication between divisions as well as communication with the public. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was going to say, because it'd be quite a task for any one person to take care of that. Thank you. And then secondly, with this annual amount and the per month amount, are those figures set for the 5-year term?
Correct. And so if there are changes like we've seen through contracting and markets change, obviously if they come to us and they have reasonable cost changes, we will have those conversations. We've experienced that a little bit with our landscape contract this past year. Like I mentioned, our custodial contract, we haven't had any major changes other than adding services. We added a couple centers and a couple restrooms to that. So it's a little bit different in the type of work that they do with the materials they're providing, like toiletries and things of that nature. But we would assess if they came to us and communicated us before the 5 years were up about, hey, we're experiencing cost changes, and that would be something that we would bring back to you to amend the contract and to discuss. And because market, just like the fuel costs and other things, it's out of our control if services do go up. So.
Just as a follow-up to that, because you mentioned the landscaping contract, which fell short this last fiscal year and had to kind of make do for a period of time here. What you said, if they came to you, what is the process if there happens to be a toilet paper shortage or something that we've never heard of before that happens? And they, is it like a formal letter to kind of reopen the contract? How does that happen to make sure this is addressed?
It would start out informally. We look at me being a project manager for the district for a few years. I look at working with contractors as a partnership. We're providing a community service for the public. With these being a recurring annual contract, we look at it the same way. So it would be discussions informally with the supervisor, and he would be handling that. And if it would arise to the superintendent's attention that manages him or myself, then we get brought into that conversation. And then it would be escalated, if you will, to an actual board item if there was a large cost increase. But the goal would be to manage the contract and kind of balance things, if you will. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director Cusworth.
Just simply, I wanted to say this was extremely thorough. And I always feel that if something's working, there's not really any reason to change. So if you're working well with this company and no one is noticing a lot of problems, then yes, I think it makes a lot of sense to just continue going with them. And thank you. I mean, I wish I had somebody cleaning my house this thoroughly.
Thank you, Director Lang.
Yes, Andrew, I'm just curious. Have you recently, or I can't recall if Tom did recently, make a comparison as to the cost of this contract versus hiring staff and doing it in-house?
Have not, but top of my head, it would be a bit more manpower, more trucks, more materials and things of that nature. So there's a reason why we switched to the contract work years ago, before Tom. And it's definitely a cost savings to be able to provide services to the community. So top of my head though, it would be quite a bit more expensive.
Okay, because we do have internal
Yes.
janitors or.
Yeah, we have two
Maintenance.
full-time custodians, and we do have overlap on a few days, and we have coverage 7 days a week. But the goal is that the heavier use facilities are getting 7-day treatment with a team of custodians that come in, and then they are typically doing and as available as needed for issues that arise at our centers all the time, but they are doing the field restrooms and other areas of the district. So again, it's spreading out the resources.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just a real minor question on both of the agreements, and I can't remember which page it was mentioned on, but in both of those, there was something in there about no advertising allowed other than, and then it referred to something else in the contract, and I didn't see anywhere else in any of the agreement language where you actually said what they have to do if they can advertise.
Okay, I'll take a look at that and clean it up.
Yeah, okay. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, we have a staff recommendation.
I'll make a motion to move our staff recommendation.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Second, any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Mooney, why don't you continue on with 9C, Landscape Services?
Thank you, Chair Hupper, members of the board. So similar process, 7 years ago, we put out contract services for, I believe it was shy of 48 parks because we've added a couple parks the past few years, but we looked at doing a lot of the services are mowing and edging throughout the whole district, as well as we do have contract parks where they're emptying trash cans, blowing walkways and raking out playgrounds and such like that. And so similar process to the custodial contract. Earlier this year, late last year, as you guys are aware, we had a temporary contract set up with two different vendors to get us to the end of this fiscal year, but knowing that we would want to put out an RFP for a 5-year contract, which we did similar to the custodial. We had 7 companies submit proposals, and staff reviewed the proposals, and based on their responsiveness, as well as a handful of other factors that went into play, we interviewed the four top companies that staff felt would be best fit for the work, and similar based on experience, prior work, and responsiveness in their proposal. We are recommending Natural Green Landscape Incorporated. Again, 5-year contract, 2 1-year extensions, and it would start in July 1, 2023. Natural Green is actually doing the east side operations currently, so they're managing 26 parks. With the rains, it's been a little bit different situation with managing our parks, but they've shown good communication the past 3+ months, and we've been looking to build on our strong relationship with them and their team. They're local. They're based out of Ventura. They're doing work for us currently. They do work with Pleasant Valley Rec and Park, as well as the city of Santa Paula locally. Basically, it's about an $8,000 increase from our prior contract from last go around with the RFP. But from our current temp contract, it's just shy of or just above $6,800 less. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Do we have any questions? Director Lang?
It's basically a comment and reading in your staff report, Mr. Mooney, about when you had your mandatory pre-bid tour and so forth, there were 7, and those 7 actually submitted proposals. That's very unusual. Usually, as we all know, reading our staff reports, that maybe half of those who attend those mandatory tours, et cetera, pre-bid, actually bid. So this is very unusual. So they should all be quality people that were interested in doing the contract for us.
Any other questions? Director Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mooney, I had a question regarding the services at Page Lane Park, which is, is a new park, and anticipated that that would be turfed fairly soon.
Correct.
In that instance, how does that affect the contract when we go through such a significant change on a park?
So we would review that with them and see as far as a change to be able to add. But in our current timing with the project, we felt it was best to put it out with 0 acres of turf, and then we would assess it. So we can take a look at that, and depending on the cost and talking with the general manager, we would need to take back an amendment for that in the time of that. And we're literally on track to get that out to bid. I'm really working with our planner to get that squared away and get that out to bid. And we're hoping late June, and we'll have an establishment period through July. So maybe August. Hopefully it'll be open to the public with turf. So, but we'll assess that as part of that. So, but because of our current situation, because I will still have to bring that back to bid or back to approval for you, for the board as well. So doing the turf installation. So.
Okay. That makes sense. And I did have a question on the list of items that's currently there. It included things like weed control and rodent control. And yet we just heard a presentation this evening that we have someone on staff that takes care of those things. Is that something that they now will be totally responsible for everything at that site, including those?
Correct. So those services would be contracted as needed, just again about resources. So as needed, Tony would that's his nickname, by the way. And so Tony would come and do work as needed, but we felt from a resource standpoint that to make those services contracted for that site.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? If not, we have a staff recommendation. I'll entertain a motion. Yes, Director Custworth.
So I recommend we authorize the general manager to enter into a contract for landscape services with Natural Green.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Director Buss, any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 9D, contracts for drought response and irrigation services. I'm guessing once more, Mr. Mooney.
Going for the hat trick. So thank you, Chair Huffer, members of the board. Again, 7 years ago, we did a RFP for drought response, a little bit different drought climate, obviously, since we've been getting some great rain and we're able to turn the water on a bit more. And so, but the goal really that the district would like to continue is to be ready for the next cycle and continue to not rely on water where we don't need to rely on water. And so we're still looking to apply budget to be able to do some drought services as well as retrofit irrigation systems. We did similar to last year and similar to our tree contracts earlier this year. It's a not to exceed contract. So we have 2 companies up to 200,000 is what we're proposing and recommending tonight. And the goal is to give staff flexibility. When we did it 7 years ago, we had an influx of rebate monies. and things. And so from a management standpoint at the staff level, it gave flexibility to be able to go to a contractor and say, hey, can you do X amount of work, and be able to move forward a little bit quicker timeline. And I know we have new faces on the board from 7+ years ago, or 6 years ago, but we did have timelines to be able to get those drought rebates. So again, a little bit different situation now, but the goal is to provide flexibility to staff to be able to get some work done throughout the park system. And so similar review, we did not do interviews for this. We looked at their proposals. One contractor, FS Contractors, we've actually worked with for many years. So they've been they were prior under contract with us. They've done a lot of work for over a decade with the district, and they've done a lot of landscape work, irrigation system work and such, as well as built new parks or expansion of parks, banyan expansion, dog park, parking, restrooms, as well as some playground work and shade structure work for us. So we've been working really closely with them. And then the new contractor would be Wildscape Restoration. So that's new to the district. However, they are located in Ventura. They've done some work for other local municipalities and such. And so they range from work in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and LA. And they do landscaping as well as restoration and some professional services as it relates to mitigation. So we thought it would be best to try with a new company and see what they can do for us. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mooney? Director Lang?
Yes, as you mentioned, 7 years ago, we did it internally and so forth for the most part, correct?
We did some work internally, but then 7 years ago is when this RFP process started for drought response. That's because of the extreme drought conditions.
Okay. Well, then I might not have a question. It was comparing what our internal costs to perform the same task would be as to what our contract would be. I understand the impact on staff and so forth, but I was just curious as to the cost.
Yeah, and it would most likely be a little bit more just from a staff labor standpoint. Materials are materials, but we wouldn't necessarily pay a markup on some materials depending if we would do it in-house, which we still do some projects in-house, but again, it's our staff already has facilities to maintain. And so it's just the balance of labor and time.
Okay, thank you.
Director Nichols?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mooney, I noticed there was a fair difference of the service rates between the two companies. And I understand, like you did with the last contract of this type, I think it was for tree services, where there was a cap annual and it would be spread between the two contractors depending on how it was needed. With such a significant difference here, how would the tasks be assigned and why, considering the rates, does one company provide a different type of service? You can maybe explain that.
Sure. So we actually had 2 contracts last go around, and what we ended up doing was we bid like for like. And so we walked the sites or provided plans and information and proposed a project to each company, apples to apples, and they gave us a number on it. And so with that process, we would do something similar to this. But then also, again, partnerships, relationships, and things like that, but numbers are numbers, right? So that's kind of our mechanism to try that out. But time and time again, FS Contractors was typically cheaper when they would do a direct proposal on specific work. And then it was more from a like workability and workmanship level of what they provided for the district. We had other contractors who fell short of responsibilities and we had issues with them, as well as FS was cheaper. And so we would approach it the same way again, just kind of restart with the new contract and get proposals for the same work at the same site and see who would have the lower bid and take a look at it that way. So, and the hype of the number included in the proposals were based on an acre conversion. So it was just strip an acre of turf, put down an acre of mulch, put down, I think, a dozen trees with irrigation, put down 25 boulders and 4,000 square feet of DG. So it was just a kind of a perfect scenario, not a specific site that they would be doing the work. So depending on, you know, the contractor's familiarness and ability to do work on an actual developed park site.
Okay, there's like a sample project almost, it sounds like.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
each real project that you have, you'll include that same the same specs as to what needs to be done. And then they would give you each one, it would give you, I guess, just another proposal then for that particular project.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that will kind of be the beginning approach to it. And then we'll see, you know, and it's again, back to workmanship is, yeah, if FS is a little more expensive, but they do better work than the other company, than Wildscapes, or Wildscapes does better work than them. It's kind of that balance of it.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. All right. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Andrew, the way you described that, it sounds like you basically would be getting mini bids on each little project from these two companies.
Depending on the scale. So we've kind of switched gears a little bit, and that's something that I'm going to be working with the staff on. In my time, we've done real small projects to really large projects, and we've actually kind of went from a medium to large approach. So we're really looking at doing renovations and fixing old infrastructure, and then adjusting some of the mulched areas and the drought response areas over time. So yes, it's a little bit different, a little bit more paper pushing for staff, but I think it gives the benefit to the dollars that we're putting to the budget.
Okay.
So, but it will range. We used to do a little bit smaller to medium projects. We've kind of gone from medium to large projects now.
Okay, I guess I was just a little concerned that it was sounding like significantly more staff time for you or other staff if you're having to basically bid each individual small project.
And in the beginning, it is a little bit more work, but it pays off in the long run to get the best value for the dollar. So,
okay.
And then one other thing to add to, there isn't tons of money floating around for rebates and such, but that's something that we're going to continue to go after. And so there might be more opportunities to do more work. And so we might be able to come back to supplement these contracts in the future if we do get some of these rebates. So.
Okay. Yes, Director Cusworth.
When I looked at that, I was assuming, maybe correctly or incorrectly, that you wanted to have two contractors, perhaps based on their availability. Because I'm sure that they're doing a lot of jobs for, other entities also. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it gives us flexibility to be able to work with who's available and such.
Are there any further questions? If not, we have two staff recommendations. I'll entertain a motion on those two.
Sure, I can do that.
Director Nichols?
Yes, do you want to take these separately, Mr. Chair, or together?
Together is fine.
Okay. Yeah, I recommend to go ahead and follow staff's recommendation to authorize the general manager to execute contracts with both Wildscape Restoration and FS contractors as recommended.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll
Director
second
Lang?
that. Yes, sir.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 10, reports and announcements. Do any of you have any questions or comments on 10A, B, or C? Director Lang?
Yes, sir. On 10B, program enrollment summary reports, on page 163, the third paragraph below the graph, I talk about this newly partnered with Gates, a mobile fitness, and the fact that a total of 32 classes were offered, and 18 of which were canceled. That's half, just about half. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, anytime you start business with a new company, they are very excited to be able to offer a lot of things. It's kind of what Doug was saying earlier, is that, we'll put a bunch of stuff in the program guide, and there's going to be things that just don't fly. Or you might get 4 kids in this class and 3 kids in this class and 2 kids in that class. And what we'll do is we'll contact the instructor and say, hey, do you want to pull all the kids into one class? So it's just one of those things that happens. And what we're noticing too right now is a lot more people are coming back to work. They want to work. There's a lot more stuff going on out there. So we're offering more classes, but there's also a lot of other people that are offering more classes. There's more options this year for people. So you guys might see for the next couple of sessions, more cancellations or slightly less enrollment than we've had in the last 2 years, because summer, the last 2 years, we were almost the only game in town during COVID. Now everybody's back up in business. So there might be some things that we start seeing. So yes, they're a new company. They're doing great, and they're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work with us.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for us to work with a new group and see how they perform and so forth. So we're glad you're opening it up. And this is a question, I don't know, for Melissa, on page 167 of the budget performance report. Down about 3/4 of the way, community engagement, and the excessive, or the more than normal percentage is 78%. And they said printing. Is that something that just came up, that they had to do a lot of printing, or?
No, so it's 3% above what we would expect at this time of year based on a purely mathematical thing, but it's seasonal, and it's typically the seasonal brochures that go out to everybody. So it's just when the timing hit that we mailed out the brochures.
Okay, I just don't, well, that, I don't recall that before, but it just jumped out at me. Printing, there must be some big event or activity going on that they needed to print.
Summer brochures just got put in the mail. And that's our biggest one for printing and mailing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Director Cusworth?
I just wanted to make note that pickleball had 178 people on their wait list.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that.
That's due to classes. We only have so many teachers and so many spots.
I'm just bringing that up.
Purely coincidental compared. Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments? Just a comment on the enrollment report. Yeah, you're talking about classes being canceled, and it's like Rick was telling us earlier this evening that you have classes you've been doing for years and years, and others that you're trying new, and some of them work and some of them don't. So, although I was interested to find out what goat gains was, because I would see that on the check register. I thought, oh, I guess parks must be using goats to trim some of the grass or something. So
There are no goats involved.
okay,
What are they doing?
It's sports.
No goat yoga?
no goats.
Nope.
Huh, disappointing.
Oh,
All right. If there are no further questions on item 10, we'll move to item 11, department reports. Mr. Mooney, Parks Division.
Thank you, Chair Huffer. I think I've spoken enough, but I'm available for any questions.
Does anybody have any further questions? Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think maybe 2 weeks ago, or I can't remember, I was out for a hike on the Los Padres Trail that starts at Triumphal Park, and met up with Billy, the grounds.
Yep, Billy Sosa. Yep.
Groundskeeper there. And we were discussing the abundant water in the park. And I was wondering what the status of that park is now with the tennis courts and the ball fields all being underwater when I was there last time.
Yep. And I unfortunately do not have a to-date report on that, but I can check on that and get back to you. Last I checked, we still had fields closed but with a little bit warmer weather. I don't know what it was the past couple days. So,
Okay.
but earlier in the week, I believe it was still closed. But
Okay.
I think Rochelle's helping me out right here.
I know he
transfo.
was saying he was getting a lot of chewed ears from
Yeah, it's still
baseball
closed.
parents.
Yeah, it's still closed.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's and I know you're familiar with the park, but that's a very interesting situation with how water flows through
Yes.
open space through the
Yes.
park. When we were building the playground, we had a little bit of rain and we had a lot of delay there because how the water moves through the soil and you don't really notice it until you get obviously the saturation that we did. But yeah.
So there was water by the restroom. There was water coming off the grass into the playground. There was water in the parking lot. There was water everywhere out through there. And other thing I wanted to say was when we had our employees here the other night, I mentioned that the groundskeepers were not the talkative bunch. That changed now that I met Billy.
Billy is a very friendly gentleman.
Yes. So had a great conversation. I think we talked for about 30 minutes, but had a wonderful conversation. Just a upstanding young man. Nice to visit with him.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Director
Yeah,
Lang?
Yeah, it's just a comment that you made during your presentation about having conversation with the planner or the planner wasn't performing. How does,
Oh, I never said the planner was not performing.
oh, okay. I know. Where does this stand right now?
We're currently in process. So we've done two rounds of recruitment and I'm currently talking to some candidates.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we will go over to the Recreation Division report. Ms. Callis?
Thank you, Chair Huffer, members of the board. The only thing I want to share with you is that we are looking to do some redesigning and reconfiguring of the program guide. So be on the lookout and change is okay.
Yeah.
I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Director Nichols?
2 questions.
Two?
Just advanced
I
ones.
don't know.
With the conversation with Rick Tanaka and the Westlake Village recreation that's provided, I just was curious, what is, because we have an agreement with the Conejo School District, but I don't remember seeing anything with the Las Virgenes. Is that all handled through the city of Westlake Village, that they handle all that contractual and then you just kind of show up with your team to take care of it?
So we actually have an agreement with the city of Westlake Village. And in fact, that's actually coming up in June. So I believe that'll be coming to the board, or at least we'll be notifying you guys of what's going on, but that needs to be updated. And then they are the ones that do the rental or get us access to that school property for the summer only.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other question I had is a follow-up to our pickleball conversation, which seems to be ongoing. Has there ever been, and maybe you know this offhand, a tennis court use survey where you know, aside from the program times, which you would know when the courts are being used, but the non-program times, how much are those tennis courts being used? I just have, do we know?
I mean, if you ask people, they say they're used all the time. So, I mean, we drive by and they're not used all the time, whether it be pickleball or tennis. So
Leading up to the development of the pickleball courts at Rancho Conejo, we actually, part of our preparation, and some of it was done when I first started to prior my beginnings with the district, and we actually did surveying. So we actually had a part-time like park intern, and they sat there and counted. And so that was part of the assessment of, and that's something that we could possibly look for in the future. And take a look at when we go back to the sites that the board prioritized back in November, and that could be some sort of assessment. But I think for the most part, we're looking at dedicated courts, not taking away or a multi-use court at this time, because that's from both communities of tennis and pickleball. That's what we're hearing, and we want to make sure people are enjoying the sports they're playing. So.
Yeah, no, I remember that discussion, but I was thinking if truly the tennis courts from the tennis people, they're saying, oh, they're used all the time, but then I drive by parks all the time and they're not being used all the time. You know, to not necessarily make a multi-use, but to convert tennis court into pickleball court, if in fact they are not being used that much. So maybe that is something we should consider in the future, is to actually do a survey and say, how much are they or are they not being used?
In recreation, we do make, and I'd have to look at the revenue line, but we do make, I want to say a couple $100,000 off of tennis. So we do pretty good with, we do rent many of the courts to existing instructors who have classes. We don't necessarily rent it to the public, but we rent it to instructors. And then we partner with a tennis organization and they teach a ton of classes for us.
Okay.
So it is actually tennis is a fairly big thing for us. Not that pickleball couldn't be, but one of the struggles that we have with adding additional classes is that we get pushback from those on the pickleball courts that we shouldn't be taking up so much time with our classes. So.
Sounds familiar. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Is there any
Director
way
Buss?
we could do an analysis on that? Like if we created more pickleball courts, I mean, to get it and compare it to the tennis so that like using the same model as tennis somehow to get the income up?
I think one of the things that if we wanted to try to make it a little more revenue based, I mean, we're never going to make 100% of whatever it is that costs us to do it. But if we wanted to, as we make it, say, hey, you guys, these courts are going to be available for us to teach classes because our classes fill up. Like people can't get into our classes. They fill up in 5 minutes. That would allow us to hire more instructors and be able to just be clear, if we're going to build these, we're going to have this many hours of instruction time on these courts or something, but.
Well, for sure. And that was kind of my point to them this evening was that, you know, there's a break even point. And when I'm looking at $5,700 a court at 1.5 million, you're talking about 42 years. Like that doesn't make sense for the community. But that would make sense. So on our side too, to see an analysis of like, well, if we had this many courts and we could kind of model after the tennis and we could get this revenue up higher. And then we say then, well, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, if more of them became instructors and stuff like that.
Alan just got certified.
I know. And that's the thing, like when this first started, there wasn't very many instructors. And
Yeah.
the 2 instructors that we currently have were players and stuff. So that now decided to work for us. So if more of that became available, there is opportunity to meet a need and train new people and get the excitement up and stuff, but we need to have access to the courts.
Yeah, I think that so pickleball was like a big war at my grandparents' retirement community, and this was 18 years ago. Yeah, it was a huge war between the tennis players and the pickleball, and it was like a massive thing. So it definitely is something, and with our community being an aging in place community, you know, we have all these wonderful programs at the senior center for, you know, people who are not in senior living facilities. Right. So I was like, oh, this is great for the more active seniors that are aging in their homes to have this. But yeah, we have to make it lucrative for ourselves as well to make sense, which it sounds like I think they would probably be more open to that, you know, a little win-win for everybody. But yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. I didn't realize tennis made that much money. So tennis and swim, we're like a tennis and swim club here. Right? Our 2 big lucrative ones. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Rochelle, you're talking about the renting courts, tennis courts to instructors. So these are classes that they're doing independent. It doesn't show up in our program guide.
Correct.
So you could do exactly the same thing
They're
with
rentals.
pickleball. If we had more pickleball courts, rent the courts to the instructors. And
Yes. And then we get a rental fee, whatever percentage they would pay on
Yeah.
our sheet.
yeah,
So that would be
to
a rental.
say that we would be losing revenue from if we converted some from tennis to pickleball, we could recover pretty much the same revenue if we had the same model, which is what they're saying. So, okay. Thank you. Yes, Director Lang.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Marissa said about her parents' senior living area. There's a big battle, but pardon? Grandparents.
I'm not that old.
I'm sorry, I gotta get used to that. But that's definitely the situation. And I don't know if you know about Florida is like the pickleball capital of the world. I mean, every community has many pickleball courts. And it's now coming to the point where people are building pickleball courts in their backyards and renting them out and probably conducting lessons and so forth. So there are some areas that are really booming with pickleball. But my original question was going to be, well, based on the city of Westlake and the services we've been providing for, I estimated 25 years, and could be more, could be less. But there were a number of city council members at Westlake, this village, who just had us up on a pedestal, the Conejo Rec and Park District. And every time they had a state of the city, once a year address and so forth, they would make sure that we could personally got invitations to go and speak and talk about CRPD, and which I did many times. So I think it's kind of waned over the years. It's just probably another contract that the council deals with and so forth. But at one time, we were really high in their list of providers and so forth. So no longer the case, but we still do the same good job.
No other questions or comments. We'll move to management services and Ms. Smith.
I have no report, but I'm available for questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Smith? Going once, going twice? No? Okay, we'll move over to, and I won't forget you this time, our general manager's report.
Thank you, Chair Huffer, members of the board. Because my Rotary Club made a lot of kind of fun with it. We put gummies in front of your desks tonight because it's 420.
I took it. It wasn't that exciting.
It's so no one bit, but we were joking because so it was a thing in my Rotary Club. So 420 is the day like marijuana. It's the number. So there was it's a long story. I learned a lot in Rotary.
I'm getting lost.
So the gummy was a gummy. This is it's not, there's no marijuana in it. It was a joke to see if you guys were,
I was wondering who provided them.
I thought it was a piece of clay.
yeah, no, it was,
Touch.
It kind of it wasn't a very good gummy.
it was like
I watched
candy or
Marissa take hers, and so then I said, I guess I can take mine. But I
Over here, experimental group.
so we were just gonna see if you guys ate it, and if you guys ate it, then we'd go, it's 420, that's the day, like it's marijuana day, and it didn't work because you guys didn't bite.
had no
You didn't
idea.
bite anyway, right? So right.
It didn't look edible.
No, it did not get the job done. Anyway, really quickly, tomorrow morning, we have a very full leadership Conejo with the chamber. So 31 out of the 32 people in the class are coming. And I think we have a 32 seat bus. So it's like all of them and Marissa and Marissa's going to go with them to kind of get some of the tour. So we're going to do the thing we do every year. But this is definitely the biggest group since COVID slowed it all down. But we're looking forward to doing that with the Chamber's leadership Conejo tomorrow. Staff did have a meeting with our our council, Mr. Sellers, and over at Combs Road, and I gave you guys kind of a summary of that, and more to come. I suppose we'll have to continue to brainstorm ideas. And we are meeting, Andrew and I are going to be having a conversation with the developer of 500 East Teal Boulevard, which is that 6 acres on Hodenkamp in Teal Boulevard, regarding their project and what they're hoping we might be interested in taking on a park site in front of there. So that's a conversation happening next week. And that's enough. I'm available for questions.
No need for a closed session.
No, and there is no need for a closed session. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna just keep that on there. We're just gonna keep that on there as during the open negotiation period.
Sure.
If there's something to report, we'll come back.
What did he just say?
When does the contract expire? End of fiscal year or labor contract?
Yeah, fiscal year, June 30.
So you think we still have sufficient time? Any questions? If not, we'll go to director's reports. I'm gonna ignore that. I'm gonna start.
Sorry.
Wow.
Nichols.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. Tuesday night, I did attend the music festival at the Civic Arts Plaza, which was a fantastic presentation. There's, let's see, Lang Ranch Elementary, Westlake Hills Elementary. I can't remember the other elementary, but also had Colina Middle School, Los Cerritos Middle School, and Westlake High School. And so they're from kindergarten up to 12th grade. It was actually a very good presentation.
This is a choral.
Choral program, yes, choral program. Did a great job from all levels. Really enjoyed it. And got to see our chair give a visual, audio, video presentation. We did a very good job, I might add, Mr. Chair. But yeah, it was just a fun partnership. Rochelle was there with me. And so she was commenting about the participation with the school district and the park district. And that's something that I would like to learn more about myself as far as how that whole program works, the partnership, and how you said that the choir director was ours, and what that means. I don't know if that qualifies to the special presentation level or maybe just an explanation level, but I think there's more for me to learn on that. And then a request. This is like a live stream for me. Thank you, Aileen, for putting this together. But I was wondering if we could have maybe a parallel list of community events that aren't necessarily CRPD events, but maybe are on CRPD activities, like a chili cook-off, for example, where maybe it's not at this level, but I don't know if it's on the back or something else, or woven within here, things that we may be interested in, or things that other people in the community think that are park district activities, even though they might not be because they're on park properties. So I don't know, I just would find that helpful if that's a possibility. And I think your office seems to be the heartthrob of all those activities. So just if you needed one more thing to do, I would find it helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Cussworth.
So I was at the choral festival last night, but when you said you were there with Rochelle, did you arrive at the same time or did you have special seating and so you saw each other?
We did not arrive at the same time. I was there in happenstance. I sat in what they think I call it the founders area. They're on the side wings, about the third level up. And one of the ushers came up to me and said, "Are you a VIP?" I said, "I don't know. If I'm supposed to be I'm just here with the Rec and Park." It's just, "Oh yes, you're a VIP. I need you to sit in this row over here." That was completely empty, the front row in the balcony. And she said, "Because all the parents are wanting to sit there and I need a VIP to take that spot so that they keep asking." So I sat down, and then shortly after that, there was 4 school board members sat down, and then Rochelle came to sit down. And I think we were the only VIP in that whole row.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
think-
I would have never known we were supposed to sit there, but that was apparently.
Nor did I happened
Yes.
upon it. So if you go moving forward, go to the second level, say you're a VIP, and they will sit you in that row, it seems like, so.
Oh, okay. Because
That's
I was
the
on the
trick.
back row of the
Not
balcony.
last night.
Yeah.
And when I asked, where am I supposed to sit for CRPD? I don't know.
Didn't you
The
get-
usher said
Didn't you
so.
get a ticket number?
No.
No.
On my cell phone, I got a whole,
It's just general admission.
Mhm.
They did not reserve seating last night.
oh,
Mm.
because on mine, they have seating assignments.
Oh,
No,
It-
they don't. If you look at your tickets, it says general admission.
Yeah, it's,
That
it's,
part, but then they, never mind.
No, it's when you get there, you'll see
Oh,
it was not organized last night.
Well, it wasn't the way it usually was. We'll
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
But by happenstance, I happened to sit next to Marissa's brother. So, though didn't even know it was her brother. So I did have a little friend there. By the end, we figured out that we kind of knew each other. But I thought that was odd, and it was a long line. They had sold out. It was an excellent program. So I think they were a little frustrated too, trying to get everybody through, get everybody seated. They had to start late, but very impressive. I don't know if I know this or not, so correct me if I'm wrong. I think that Frank LaGuardia and all of the elementary school chorus teachers are somewhat affiliated with CRPD. Is that
they are
correct?
hired by us. They are our independent contractors, all of the elementary school music people.
And then the junior high and high school are all part of
Schools.
the school.
Mhm.
So I think that that's pretty impressive, because they kept mentioning at our concert anyway, that they wanted these elementary school students to be going into the middle school and high school, that they felt that if they weren't starting these programs with these young students, that it wouldn't be later filling in, the other things. They wanted them to get like a feeling for chorus. Do we do the same thing with the orchestra at the schools?
The band
Right.
and the strings are also in all the elementary schools are independent contractors through us. I will tell you that I foresee change in the future because I believe school districts are getting money for music in elementary schools.
Oh, so they may be hiring their own.
They're gonna get money from music.
oh,
Oh,
Right
okay.
now it's PTA funding.
Okay. So, well, it's also funded just through parents paying, isn't it?
In the elementary school,
Right.
all of our programs are funded through paid, and then there is financial assistance for families who can't afford it. And that is how all those programs are paid for.
Because the elementary schools seem to have the most participants. Definitely, wouldn't you say? I mean, in our group, the whole elementary school was huge. They filled up the whole bottom half, and then the other kids filled up, quite a bit too. But I was impressed with the attendance of the elementary schools, and that's how it was last year, and that we're such an active participant in the arts. So I know at my school, we do have an orchestra at our school that is a LAUSD paid person, but there's not that many people in it, and there is no choral whatsoever, other than that if the school hires a music teacher, which we don't have right now. So the fact that CRPD is providing that, and in the elementary schools, though, it is an after-school program, correct?
Not for all of them. Chorus, I believe, is all after school, but band and strings, they do have during school hours.
Okay, it's just a pull out.
Mhm.
No, they go at lunch. Why my daughter didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
We're hungry. We're hungry family.
hard to eat and play the trumpet.
Yeah, she was very upset about that. So you had to eat after.
I see.
take her gummy home.
I already took it. Didn't work.
So other than that, I met with Mr. Friedel yesterday, just to kind of give him some ideas of what I learned from the convention that I went to in San Diego. I thought I should tell somebody what I learned, because it was there was nobody else there to talk to. Normally, the other two times we're all there talking about it, but I thought, well, can I just kind of meet you and tell you what I learned at the convention? So I think we had a nice chat. The other thing I would like to say, that at the keynotes, and I think almost every workshop I went to, one of the main jokes was about pickleball. So that everybody was laughing about, oh, yes. And besides pickleball, we'll talk about this. And they put a lot into pickleball. So this is sort of a whole thing going through California, the pickleball revolution, I suppose. So that's it.
Thank you. Director Buss.
I wrote mine down this time so I would remember, since it's chili cook-off season. So I met with the pickleball players. That was an interesting meeting. And then I also went to see my daughter and my nieces at the all-district chorus performance. And then I went today as well to the Conejo Volunteer Senior, what's the P?
Conejo Volunteer Senior
Volunteer Program.
Oh, program. Okay. Yeah, so I went to that and I had the pleasure of driving home Eileen's predecessor, Shirley. After meeting her, she asked me if she learned that I live in Lynn Ranch and she lives in Lynn and if I could give her a ride. And I said, yes, I could give you a ride. Said, excuse my dirty car, my kids ride horses. So, and I helped her in and out of it because it's a little tall for senior citizens who are shorter. But I got her home. She showed me her beautiful view of Wildwood. I saw the teepee today from her backyard, which actually she has an amazing view for Lynmere. Yes. So besides that, and then tomorrow at 8:30, I'll be on the bus. So that's it. That's all I got for you.
Director Lang.
Okay, I went to the Arbor Earth Day event and a little history. Years ago, there was just Arbor Day and it was a CRPD event. Earth Day hadn't been created. Then the city came up with Earth Day and then somehow our group merged. But I thought this year's was very small. I don't know if there's less interest or just we didn't, connect with some exhibitors. And we used to have a program, we'd speak and there'd be an Indian, ceremony, etc. It felt, I was let down, to be honest. Although I did bring a couple tomato plants home for my granddaughter, so that was a bonus. Also, I attempted to go to the all-district music conference. I ended up parking over at the lakes, almost as far as you could go, and then walked up that ramp. I got there half an hour before, I was thinking, okay, I'll give me enough time. I stood in line for at least 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I said, I just couldn't take anymore. My leg was just hurting so much. And then I left and I ran into Doug. He was just getting there, I think. But it was not the same in the past. It's, I guess, well, when we spoke, we'd go backstage and prep and all that. And it was a little different feeling and so forth. So, but anyway, I'm glad that you who did end up, attending had a good experience and it was a good performance. But, and just to be honest, Aline, I won't be attending any of the others attempting to attend. I just can't take that. So, and there's a couple other little things, but that concludes my report.
Okay, just a couple of things that I did on was last weekend, the 8th, whenever that was, went to the Stagecoach Inn and their Conejo hunt, which was sort of cute.
Yeah.
I didn't actually hunt for any Coneos, but kids were having fun there. 4 of us were at the CSVP luncheon this afternoon, which the food was okay, but the donut truck was spectacular. So. And then last Friday, and I had intended to get numbers, but the last Friday, the tax program ended. And as far as I could tell, we were at or very close to record numbers in terms of number of returns that we did during the season. So no, we're not staying open until October 16th. Let's see, request for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Anybody have anything? No, I do have it. It's not a full board agenda, but I would like to, after mid-May, see if we can get the pickleball subcommittee back together with staff to, talk about things. And then, what did I do with my? Oh, let's see, 13. Do we have any public waiting by to,
Dreamer,
No.
dreamer.
all right. And you said we do not have a need for an executive closed session?
No closed session.
Good news. Okay, I am going to adjourn this evening's meeting in memory of Wesley Welling. Wesley was a 15-year-old freshman at Westlake High School. He is survived by his father, Craig Welling, who is a longtime member of our staff. And according to what Jim told me today, Craig actually showed up to work the next morning just because that was the best way for him to handle it. So he's survived by his father, Greg, his mother, Kelly, older sister, Hannah, and a younger brother, Cody. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting in memory of Wesley.